love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, whoa, I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, then all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, whoa, I will never be the same, will never be the same ever again.
Hello and welcome to another SDA Q&A. Good to see everybody here in the chat, and those watching later on, welcome also. My very special guest today is Dr. Jonathan Butler, and it's great to have you on the program, John. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Now, I just played the interview I did with you and Ron Numbers. I think it was last week, maybe. If people want to check it out, it is season 15, which we're in now, episode 18, and it was number 27 of the seminal series we did, season 2, all on Des Ford and Glacier View. And boy, it was a real honor to have you both on the show back then, and to replay it just now, and to have so much interest in it again 5 years later.
Yeah,
So,
it was enjoyable to do, and it's. I'm sorry Ron isn't around to do it with again. Yeah.
yes, yeah, very sad, real sad loss there. I'm just going to quickly bring up on the screen. I've found the memorial service there. I'm not sure if you can see it. You might be able to check if that's
Yes,
the right number.
that's it. Yeah.
And it is. I'll just double check. It basically, if people type in Loma Linda University or Ron Numbers Memorial Service, all I did was type in Ron Numbers Memorial Service.
On
And,
YouTube.
on
You did?
YouTube, in
Yes,
YouTube,
yes.
So I encourage everyone to go and watch that, and to learn a little bit more about Ronald Numbers. And of
The
course,
speakers included. There were 3 of us, and it was Eric Anderson who edited the book that we're going to be talking about, and then I spoke, and then Ed Larson, who was a student of Ron's, that's gone on to write many books.
yes, it was a really good memorial service. It was very caring and loving. It was great that Loma Linda allowed it to happen on their soil. And and those who don't know Ron Numbers, who we're just talking about at the moment, he wrote this incredible book, Prophetess of Health, a study of Ellen G. White. I recall, John, in the maybe mid-'80s, coming across The White Lie, and Walter Ray's book, and it shocked me so much. I kind of got into the first chapter or two, and I just had to put it down. I couldn't cope with it. But later on, I remember years later, it might have been even 5 or 6 years later, I stumbled across The Prophetess of Health. This exact book, actually. This was I found it on my parents' shelf, and I found it a lot more palatable to read, as far as shocking me, because Ron wrote in such a way that was almost like an observer. He was just presenting the facts, as all good historians should do.
Yeah.
And I was able to just read the content, and it did shock me, it did challenge me. But I would suggest, if people only ever read one book on Adventism that is challenging and asks Adventists some hard questions, that's the book to go to, or at least to start at, anyway. And I think by the time Ron had passed, that it had been released with its 3rd edition.
Yes.
And Ron's wife was involved with the 3rd edition. Can you tell us a little bit about that? She wrote a chapter, I think, at the end or something.
Oh, yeah, that was his second wife, if we can put it that way.
Yeah.
She was a psychologist, and Janet Numbers, and was with him right at the end, was very involved in caring for him in his at the end of his life. And she co-authored with him a kind of extended study on Ellen White's illnesses, and it came up with, I think, an interesting slant that there's been a number of studies of Ellen White in terms of, like, the partial complex seizure argument, that brain damage led to her visions and so on. But this was more of a psychiatry blending with sociology, how the illnesses fit with the life of the person. And it was, I think, less clinical and more social in the way it explains Ellen White. And probably of all the studies that have been done on her mental shape, I think this is probably the one that will hold up more.
Oh, interesting. Wow. And as I'll hold it up again, as I think this is the first edition. I've also downloaded the one on Amazon, the Kindle version, which has the updated chapter there.
Yes.
And I think you write the introduction to the third edition too.
Well, yeah, it's the second.
Came out in the second
edition, and I wrote an essay describing the whole experience of Ron writing the book and the reactions to the book, and it was called "The Historian as Heretic."
Yes.
And I mean, his own father wouldn't put the book up in the living room, and didn't want to be seen with him in public, and there was a lot of turmoil, personal turmoil, and of course he lost his job at Loma Linda and so on. So I'm telling that story, that personal story.
Yes.
And then in the third edition, it becomes, I think, well, it's not a preface anymore. It's a formal introduction.
Yes. Yeah. But that third edition, I just want to highly recommend people go and buy.
Yes.
It's a fantastic read. It is very informative.
Yeah. And there's a lot more in there. There's a lot more in there than the earlier.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And it's available, I'm pretty sure, on Kindle still. I can check that out during the interview.
Yeah. Well, you can order it in Amazon too.
Yes, Amazon.
It's in print. Yeah. He wanted more than anything. He wanted the book available to people. He wasn't trying to make money off it. He just wanted the book available.
Yes. I want to come in a moment to the pushback that he would have gotten, and I want to talk about your journey throughout your Adventist experience. I do want to just raise Motor Sapien has just written, because a lot of people watching today didn't know about even season 2 at all. In fact, that's why a lot of new members have come on in the last year, and it hit me that only those who were on Facebook 5 years ago would have even known about season 2, and yet it's such an incredibly informative season, and that's why I've been slowly bringing it onto YouTube. So a lot of those who have watched it and got to know you, it's just last week. So whereas for you and I, it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
But for me, it also feels like last week. And Motor Sapien writes, "Hello all, glad to see Dr. Butler again. What a hoot he was with numbers." And one of the things that kept coming through in the comments last week or the week before when I replayed this episode was there was a lot of humor running through the whole program. So if you get a chance, I encourage you to go and watch it again yourself. I think you'll really enjoy it. And you and Ron are like a tag team comedic duo. It's really, really good, but very informative. Now, Jillian,
he had the gleam in his eye. He was an impish person.
Yes. Now, Jillian is watching today, and in our last program, we did discuss a little bit about Glacier View and Des Fort, and she's going to come on at the end of the program and just refresh our memories as to some of the really good comments that were raised in that conversation we had a week or two ago. So she'll be coming on when we've finished our chat.
It'd be good to see her.
Good to see as well. One of the main things I want to talk about today is the book, Reclaiming the Prophet. And a lot of the guys who have contributed chapters, including yourself, yours is chapter 2, Eric Anderson, Niels Eric Andreasen, yourself, Denny 14, Larry Garrity, Ron Graybill, George Knight, Don McAdams, Gil Valentine. These guys, including yourself, have had a huge influence on me and many others in the Adventist Church, and many others who are perhaps on the fringe or would have called ourselves gospel Adventists or progressive Adventists. We kind of saw you guys as holding up a little bit of a hope for us. And when I left the church nearly 10 years ago now, I can't believe it's gone so fast.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I left is I'd been observing this loop where progressive Adventists speak up, share their ideology, their thoughts of progressing away from some of the more authoritative statements of Ellen White to more biblical versions, perhaps. I noticed a loop where anyone that spoke up tended to get suppressed or shut down or lost their job. There was some form of censorship. And so it began to occur to me that it wasn't really a pendulum swing from progressive to traditional ideas, that it was progressives trying to even get to a point that some kind of a movement within a movement could be created where they could have their own pendulum swing if they wanted. It didn't seem to me that progressives were just another element or spectrum of the Adventist church. It seemed to me like they were a new thing, that whenever they tried to create some kind of network, connection, cohesive group that could grow and expand within the bigger, broader church, they were shut down. And of course, doing this SDAQ&A intently for 5 years and coming up to over 500 interviews, my suspicions have been confirmed. And a long time leading up to this book, people were saying, I would do shows called Ted Wilson, A Real Adventist. And I'd get a lot of pushback because people say, oh, no, that's not my Adventism. My point was that, sure, you can have your kind of Adventism, maybe your Des Ford's leaning theology or whatever you want to put Ellen White further in the back seat. You can have your more gospel-focused Adventism until you speak about it publicly. And at that point, you will find the rubber hits the road and your kind of Adventism isn't as accepted as you would like it to be. Now, Larry Geraghty, in my interview with him and Fritz Guy years ago, said that, his kind of Adventism was a big tent Adventism where he wanted to include the traditional Adventists, the historic Adventists, the progressive Adventists. That's the kind of Adventism I had and I wanted. But particularly when this book was, shall we say, banned after its release, it was almost the final nail in the coffin for me of the endless hope that progressives like to put out there. Things are changing. Hang in there. It's going to be different. We exist. Our voice is growing. And it made me feel like, I think this confirms that this growing voice that the progressives think they have isn't as substantial as they'd like. And I'd love to see a home for the gospel Adventists, for the progressive Adventists. And a lot of people say, hey, my local church accepts me and I've got no problem. That's not my point. You can have a small group of people that accept you. You can have your own internal thoughts. But this movement will not accept you sharing those thoughts publicly. Now, I've just rambled on a fair bit there, but I'm absolutely excited to have you on the show because you wrote a chapter in this book. You know all of these guys personally. To me, these guys are the good guys. They're the guys that held a shining light for me and offered this hope. I'm wondering if it's false hope. And I'm not judging. I'm asking questions. I'm doing what Ellen White suggested, to agitate, and to scrutinize truth claims. I want you now just to spend some time, not necessarily answering what I've just kind of proposed, but telling me a little bit about how the book came together, how you guys all get on, what kind of connections do you have, what was your contribution to this book, and then lead all of that up to when the book was released and the next step that followed.
Yeah, in other words, wait till later to address some of the things you're talking about.
Yes,
on the banning of it.
Okay. Exactly. Yeah,
that's fine. It was really kind of a brainchild of Eric Anderson, who ended up editing the book. His his interest, he had observed that Seventh-day Adventists, particularly in North America, and I would assume European, Australian, I mean, it's hard to call it the West, when it's so global, but that Seventh-day Adventists, these more progressive types that you're talking about for sure, but many SDAs were just losing an interest in Ellen White. The medical students that showed up at Loma Linda, or the college kids, I mean, they just weren't interested. You couldn't. It wasn't a matter of quoting her or finishing an argument with an authoritative statement. They just weren't paying attention to her at all. And you get this from the pastors. They say, you're too late with this book, because Ellen White is of so little interest to many of these Seventh-day Adventists. So Eric was looking at that and said, well, we need to talk to these people. And his approach was to stipulate that the historical critical work that had been done on Ellen White in the 1970s, like you mentioned Walter Ray, and all the literary stuff that had been, McAdams, who's in the book, or Ron Numbers, that wasn't so much literary work, but the Ron Numbers book, Bill Peterson, all these people that were working in the 70s, just stipulate that they got it right. They were accurate. Let's not hash out whether she copied 34% or 36.5. Just they got that right. Yeah. Now where do we go with this woman?
Yes.
Right. Does she have any future for the church? And so the book was sort of premised on that, and it was, these were people who were writing to a lay audience, pretty much. We weren't trying to talk among scholars with this book, even though the people in the book are scholars, but they were just looking up from their note cards and talking in a conversational way about Ellen White and what they felt she could offer people, stipulating all these flaws and all these problems and all of that. So we get together in Angwin, and there's a number of the writers, but also other people are there, and sponsors of the group. We raised some money so we could get together. We had nice meals. We hung out, talked over the meals, talked in sessions, read papers to each other. And we were looking, and I was sort of in on this with Eric, who's a very close friend of mine, on who should be at this conference that really gets along. We can talk to each other. We didn't want people in combat, or we didn't want people who were still wanting to go back to the 70s and rehash that. Forget that. We got that point. Let's move on. And so it turned out to be a very collegial group. We enjoyed ourselves, went out to eat at times, always working during the day with papers. And we got to know each other. I mean, we knew each other, but we got to know each other more. And I'm not sure that we were thinking of a book, at first, but then we actually George Knight called up Dale Galusha, who was a publisher at the Pacific Press, and he said, there's a book brewing here, and you ought to, take a look. And George and Dale are close. George has published all these books through Pacific Press, and so Dale took a look, and Dale then got on the bandwagon, and the book kind of became his child. I mean, if you could say Eric birthed the book, now it was a foster parent in Dale, and Dale became really enthused about it, read the manuscripts. He met with us all down in La Sierra for another meeting, and the writers were there. And by then we had a we had the manuscripts for a book. So it was almost like a love fest in some ways in England. I mean, getting together with these people that you knew by reputation, some of them you knew personally, quite personally, but just the talking about Ellen White among friends was
Yeah.
really an interesting experience. And so Dale then, when he met with us in Glacier, he very encouraging, and we'll get to what, kind of some of the obstacles and what has stalled things a bit, but that was the whole idea that was going on.
I've just brought a picture of it up onto the screen there.
Yeah.
And I just want to add, so some of the shows of season 2, people have offered to sponsor because they know they're quite well received, and it's a good way to help promote whatever they're doing. And Test the Prophet is watching at the moment, and he sponsored your interview with Ron Numbers and myself.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. And he's watching right now, and I encourage anyone to go and check out his YouTube channel, Test the Prophet. He's done a lot of work on this, and he has just written. I've enjoyed several of Dr. Butler's articles on Ellen White. I especially enjoyed his take on her as a Victorian woman and how her Sunday law concerns would have been accepted in her time. So he's also followed a lot of your material as well.
Nice to hear.
And the book, so you're suggesting that in recent times, a lot of students, young people, and I agree, don't really know much about Ellen White. She's not a topic of conversation so much with a lot of the younger people. And also the church at large from a leadership level seem to be wanting to address that. So you guys wanted to address it in a way to let's bring her in a more public setting to lay people who don't really know her so well. Let's defend her, but in a light that also sees her in context of her time period, what she said, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And sort of a lighter introduction to a more positive view of Ellen White. I think somewhere in the introduction, one of the writers mentions that they had felt, it might have been in Spectrum or AT, I can't remember, but they mentioned that they'd felt that over the years they may have contributed to undermining Ellen White in some ways with some of the revelations they'd had, and that part of this book was also to kind of show that though they had criticism, they have also kept her as someone that they want to still hold as a very important, inspirational person to them and to the church.
Yeah.
So that's a second reason for the book. One, to present her to a younger audience, perhaps, and see her in context. Secondly, as a way to perhaps counter some of the overcorrection of her authority that some of the leadership might be presenting at the moment. And perhaps even in the last 15 years, certainly since Ted Wilson was in power, there seems to be a concerted effort to elevate Ellen back into this ongoing position of authority. Were you and the other authors also not only presenting to the lay people, were you also having a little bit of a, hey, you leaders, listen, she's our prophet as well? Was that part of the
I think
thinking?
I suppose you never get that out of your head totally. I mean, you're aware when you write a page or write a paragraph that some of the people who will read it and be critical of it. I mean, you kind of have a second sense about that or a third sense about that. But I think it's important not to allow what we would call just bluntly the right wing or
Yes.
Traditional SDA to dictate our agenda.
Yes.
Just write how you feel about things, and don't be answering their questions and their problems. I have the same trouble with the sort of the ex-Adventist on the left, who's just angry about Ellen White and wants to attack her all the time. That's as extreme and as fundamentalist to me as the right. So now we did try. This is one of the things, and I do it in my essay a bit. We're trying to find middle ground between the extremes.
Yes.
And I think the General Conference in some ways, and the White Estate in some ways, is more marginal than we are in this book. And I mean, I hate to, the word extreme is maybe pejorative, and I don't mean to attack them, but I think in many ways, the critics of the book are more extreme than the writers of the book.
Yes.
And so, but to return to your question, I mean, I just I have trouble when we listen too carefully to the extremes. I think we need to find what we want to say and just say it.
Yeah. This really highlights, and I'm trying to really frame what I think's my most important observation, that we have, like you say, this is more of a middle ground, less extreme, open. I find the progressive Adventists open to diversity, open to inclusivity. But here's my rub, and my point, perhaps, that goes through all that I've been saying in the last couple of years. The more traditional conservative Adventist, the leadership, the right wing, as you've mentioned, they have many platforms. They speak up boldly.
Mm-hmm.
The side that is the more this is not my Adventism, progressive kind of Adventist, when saying, hey, don't dictate what my kind of Adventism is, and I say, okay, come up and share your thoughts, they are very hesitant to do so. So my point isn't what the motives are, what the beliefs are of the progressive Adventist. My observation is twofold. I note that when you do speak up, you get suppressed, shut down, cancelled, marginalised. And I note the reticence to speak up. Now, when I got wind that this book was coming out, I was excited. I thought, finally, these guys are giving a bit of pushback. They're providing information to lay people, putting Ellen White in a good, healthy, inspirational perspective, and they're speaking publicly, supported by Pacific Publishing, publicly to the more conservative, traditional, historicist Adventists and leaders, saying, no, this is our Adventism.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people in the list here, and many others, said to me, see, you are wrong. We are networked. We do get to speak up and share our Adventism. And I said, wait and see. You watch. I've got a prediction what will happen. I'm not happy that happened, but it happened. So my point is that the progressive, that's not my Adventism kind of Adventist, has all these good intentions, good motives, brilliant insights, great material, but they are reticent to speak up. And when they do, they are shut down. Now, there's a whole lot of other questions that come into my mind. Why are they still so positive that they can endless hope it's going to change when it doesn't? But I'm interested in your thoughts because, to me, and none of this is a criticism. I get really annoyed when people say to me, oh, you're attacking the church. No, I am not. I'm challenging. I'm asking questions because I care about the very people who are standing up for what I believe is a very unique and special kind of Adventism. But I am very annoyed when people say, "Oh, I won't speak up."
Yeah.
And then I'm annoyed with people who say, "Oh, we can speak up anytime we like." It doesn't add up to me, and I'm interested in your thoughts on that assessment and what your takeaway is.
Well, and I'm probably running to your earlier question really in saying this, but three of the authors met October 19. I don't know if you know about this date, but October 19 at Andrews with the White Estate and the what's called the Gift of Prophecy Study Committee, something like that. So the big group of people, and it was Eric Anderson, George Knight, and Denny Fortan, and they sat at one side of the table, and the others were there and discussing the book. And the people on our side feel like the book is constructive, and it has been misunderstood by their side in many respects. So they made the case for the book, and it was a cordial meeting. All of the participants report that. Not that there weren't criticisms on their part, not that there wasn't some condescension from them, and a little bit of bite to some of the criticism. But all in all, they got along together. But at one point in Eric's presentation, both Eric and Denny presented, as did George. George presented sort of the history of all the ways that the White Estate had interfered with progress in understanding Ellen White, had promised to educate the church more than they ended up doing. For example, with the McAdams Literary Study, said, look, Don, don't publish it. We will re-educate the church so that your thesis will be heard. Well, they never did that. So, McAdams was disappointed by that. 50 years later, he finally publishes the book. But George, in one instance after another, pointed out how, people weren't getting the message, just like they hadn't got the 1919 message. They buried those minutes. Well, they kind of, with Ray too, and with Fred Veltman.
Yes.
They sort of shelved it. I mean, oh, well, we've answered that, but it isn't integrated into the life of the church.
That's a good word. Yeah.
And so Eric told them, and this is something we'll have to unpack here, but Eric said in his remarks to them, you need to understand, you can't ban this book. It is published and it will be marketed. There's no stopping it. Now, we don't know for sure how, whether it'll be Pacific Press. They still have to have a meeting between Dale and the North American Division leadership and discuss whether they're going to continue. This is Dale's baby. He loves the book. He wants to market it. But if there's too much blowback, I think he won't. But if he doesn't, he releases the copyright to us. He's perfectly enthused about it. And there's a very good chance, one of the options is to publish this on a website free of charge. You just go on and get the book on a link and read it that way. Now, that's already possible in a number of sort of informal, Chuck Sandifer does it through his Sligo Church, Choir Zoom Sabbath School does it. So you can get the book. You can get it as a PDF. But it'll be a more formal thing that you can just get this book. Now, it may be Oak and Acorn will do it in California. We don't know for sure, but it is and it was quite deflating. I mean, I'm talking out of school here, but it was deflating to the people there listening that they really did not have control of what was going to happen to this book. So it has not, and George makes this point, it isn't formally banned. It's just that Dale decided that the climate wasn't right, and Ted was still in office at that point, Ted Wilson. So he said, well, let's just go easy, and we may publish it down the line, we may not. I mean, maybe this is just kind of a technical point I'm making. I understand your frustration, and you have a right to be frustrated about the way progressives are treated in the church and so on. But this book is, for one thing, it's too popular to go out of print. We get letters, emails, remarks all the time from people on the phone. They love this book, and they're not necessarily progressives. I mean, in many cases, they're just middle of the road SDAs that love this book, and they're thinking of their child who doesn't know about Ellen White. Okay, I can hand this book to. So we're getting a lot of that. I mean, I think the people on the right think, oh, this book is a nasty book that is going to undercut Ellen White. But the experience we're getting with the readership is, hey, they like the book and they like Ellen White after they read the book. So I think that we need not be totally discouraged by the resistance on the right to the book, which I think ultimately will fail here. The right now, as we were talking about earlier, I mean, they're the marginal. The progressives aren't the marginal on this topic. It's these groups that want us to nostalgically go back to the Ellen White of the 1950s, or further back to the Ellen White as they imagine her, are out of touch. That Ellen White's not available to us anymore. We need a new Ellen White for new times.
Yeah, when I did the promo picture for today's program, and it had lots of comments on it, a lot of people say, well, I got a copy and I can get it, and here's a link. And I've just put a link to one of the unofficial ways people can get a copy of it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that I remember when I was at Avondale as a young person, and my band released a vinyl record, and it was banned from the campus. And that was the best thing college could have ever done, because it made it sell out like crazy.
Exactly.
But when I did the promo about the book being banned, people, I can still buy it. I can still get it. I've got copies. And to me, that totally misses my point. My point is, even if you guys are the non-marginal group, you are the most suppressed group and the most unwilling to speak publicly group.
Mm-hmm.
So to say, but we aren't marginal, we are the majority, I would like to suggest, okay, well, speak up then. My frustration isn't if the book's available or not available.
Mm-hmm.
My observation is that when any progressive says to me, Ted Wilson's Adventism, that's not my Adventism. How dare you try and say what my Adventism is? Well, A, that's not what I'm saying. I'm in a fun, cajoling way saying, well, come on then, share your Adventism. And they won't. I don't mean just on my show. There have been Adventists who have spoken up on other people's shows and have lost their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think, I don't understand the claim that we are not marginal if, in fact, that group that says we are the majority won't speak up. That's what I can't get my head around, and not being able to get an answer to that frustrates me. And who cares if I'm frustrated or not? I only speak up because I really like you guys. I've done more to promote Des Ford than I think anyone on the planet in the last 5 years. And I believe there's a special kind of Adventism that's not for me. It's not something I think the general Protestant movement really likes. But for those within Adventism who have had lifetime of stress about their assurance of salvation, and maybe worried about other running to the hills and the Sunday law and those kind of things, for people in the Adventist church, I believe that the Adventism that you speak of, the progressives speak of, is a safe haven. And I would like to, the reason I'm frustrated is I would like to see that safe haven grow, be boldly claimed and stood up for. But whenever I say anything, come on then, speak up, share that. If they are employed or have some kind of standing in the church they don't want adjusted or tweaked, they will not speak up. The more traditional kind, well, away they go. They have all sorts of independent ministries. They have ministries supported by the Adventist church. So this majority that do see Ellen White in the correct way, why aren't they doing something about it? You guys did, and you sure will still have your book out there. But what is it doing to galvanize people into some kind of community that provides a safe haven for the many Adventists who are trying to avoid falling into the trap of fear of the end times, concern about their salvation? I'm not criticizing. I'm trying to encourage more of the kind of public speaking that you do, more of this kind of work. But I also am mildly astonished that a lot of these guys claim that it isn't that way. And I say, okay, well, come on the show. Share me the way of what your Adventism is. I literally had an SPD leader, from the division here the other day say, I couldn't come on your show and share my views because I would lose my job. So there's something wrong here. There's something not adding up. And I think the progressives just wish it away. Hey, behind the scenes, we've got this and we've got money and we know that Ellen White's in the right perspective. But I don't see any action or demonstrable opposition or resistance to my claim.
Well, my one thing I'm thinking while you're talking here, and what you're saying is I completely get it. And I would never again want to be employed by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I mean, I got that part. But I think that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is a lot like Catholicism, in the sense that these are big tent churches, in a sense, with a lot of different versions of what a Catholic is or what a Seventh-day Adventist is. And now I may be in a odd bubble here in California, and you may be in an odd bubble in Australia.
Yeah, the progressives here and where you are carry this light of hope that I find around the rest of the world it doesn't dovetail.
Well, and I was at a conference or attended at Friedensaal, and these Europeans are there, and they're talking about Ellen White, and I said, boy, I wish I'd grown up with that Ellen White, the European Ellen White, because when you grow up with an American Ellen White, you have all this baggage to sort of dispose of. But I do think if you're talking numbers, I mean, that is numerical, not raw numbers, although we could talk about him. But if you're talking numbers of progressives, they're never going to be the majority of SDAs. I mean, but you can be an SDA and attend your little Zoom Sabbath school and your book club, and you can marry a girl and hang out with a group and of like-minded people. And Now, these tend to be sort of college towns or university areas, or more metropolitan areas, maybe. Did you find them? And I've noticed with this whole Zoom phenomenon since COVID, people beg these Sabbath schools, do not shut down now that COVID is sort of because we're in a little church in upstate Michigan, or we're in somewhere in Arkansas, and we can't get the kind of classes you're talking about, the Sabbath schools that you have and the speakers you have, because we're back in this Hickville kind of thing. And so, but yeah, I mean, I think I can understand you despairing
Well,
of
I
the progressive getting, invited to the GC. I mean, it's not going to happen.
I think like Joy Butler, I don't know if you guys are related or not. She is married to the butler whose father was the butler that was brought in as the accountant to fix up all the Davenport problems.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
So, but she writes, "Sorry you're so frustrated, Peter. Some of us might just be too tired." My point is, please, people don't think, "Oh, he's frustrated, angry, extra." Forget me. But please note my observation, the accuracy of it. Forget about whether I'm tired or not. Forget about whether you guys are tired or not. Forget about whether leadership is going to always be majority conservative. I speak to a specific kind of Adventism that never seems to gain traction, and I'm trying to work out why. So perhaps I'm not frustrated. I'm just saying, why hasn't it? What can we do, guys, to make it happen? I would have thought, hey, guys, what can we do? Let's put out a book like this and have it gain traction, and maybe it will. Maybe we're on the edge of people really discovering this book and somehow getting coordinated. What interests me, frustrated or not, but as an older father of two young girls, 11 and 13, who one is more involved with the Adventist church than the other, I fear for young people coming into the church. This is my big point. They come into the Adventist church, they grow up into it, or they join it, and there's a very high chance that they will stumble across Ellen White's great controversy, last days, Sabbath, Sunday laws kind of Adventism, the Adventism that leaderships wants to propel and lift up and elevate. What that to me, that elevates the responsibility of the progressive Adventists to get coordinated and create a safer kind of Adventism within Adventism for these people, not for individuals just to go to church and say, hey, I've got Happy Sabbath and Haystacks this afternoon, and I've got a nice little college kind of area and I can fit in here. I think a bigger responsibility needs to be felt, but that these guys don't just feel tired because they've been trying for a long time or observe certain things. There needs to be some kind of leadership coordination that actually creates a place almost named as, we are the Progressive Adventists. Here's our headquarters, that actually creates a place for my daughters, if they became Adventists, to go to, and I wouldn't feel worried. Because at the moment, you grow up in the Adventist church, you join the Adventist church, you're a young person, there's a good 80% chance you're going to stumble across the kind of Adventism that's very unhealthy.
Yeah. I think built in, and maybe this is the wide view here, but I think built into Seventh-day Adventism is social mobility. And the reason for it is, I really credit Ellen White for it, that the interest in education, in health, in medicine, and in lifestyle. These things, SDAs move up the ladder. And as a result, they end up going to colleges and graduate schools, and they go to med school and dental school. And I tend to think about, and when I'm thinking of an SDA, I think of somebody in the West, or some, I'm putting West in quotes here. I'm including you. But this Africa, Latin America, SDAs, who would probably be kind of fundamentalist about Ellen White, for the most part, they're going to go through this too. And they're going to end up showing up at our colleges and universities and med schools and dental schools. And they're going to read Ron Number's book. It'll be 100 years after he wrote it, but they're going to bump into that progressivism. And I'm saying what you're hoping for, I think, will happen. But it might be, a little bit of the underground seeping up. I mean, I doubt that they're going to get a lot of administrative appointments. It might not have an institutional presence, but Ron Numbers used to travel around the world for conventions and so on. And there were people in Thailand and there were people in Japan. They wanted to meet with him. They wanted to touch the hem of his garment. They had read his book. And they were probably a distinct minority where they were, but they still had been exposed. So I think because of the nature of the church, this is not the Jehovah's Witnesses we're talking about here, who don't have that built-in social mobility, even though they have experienced a good deal of it for other reasons. But the SDAs do have that. And as a result, they're going to have to answer questions about Ellen White, if she matters to them at all down the line.
I agree about the influence. For example, Canwright's works are still influential today and hugely influenced me in the 80s. My observation is that this influence has been ongoing, relevant, powerful, informative. But since Canwright, to Numbers, to you, to this show, to this book, the influence of the words and the ideas and the truths have not gained any significant traction to form a safe haven that perhaps does need to be more institutionalized than ideologically-alized. I know that's not a word. But I believe that, yes, 100 years from now, people will read Prophetess of Health and will benefit from it. They'll discover Des Ford. They'll benefit from it. They'll read all sorts of writings that are more progressive within the Adventist Church and benefit from it and have their mind stimulated and maybe saved at a personal level. But the reason I left the church, as I held my little 2-year-old and watched the no vote, was an epiphany of an older man bringing a younger generation into the Adventist church. And I thought, I can't put my name on it anymore because I know it won't change. The progressives will continue to have influence, but they are not organized enough to actually do anything substantial. That means that if you become an Adventist or grow up into the Adventist church and you suddenly become 14, 15, 18, 23, and you need a place to be able to see Ellen White as inspirational, not domineering, you need to have an assurance of your salvation. There is nowhere to go. You can go to a college campus, you can go to a local church, 1 in 500 in your country, but there needs to be a place where people can go and feel safe. And I guess part of my 5 years and 500 interviews, and still only mildly frustrated, I'd love to see you guys, the progressives, instead of having a massive exodus in the church, the leaving rate of young people is potentially close to 60%. I'm trying to address that. I'm not attacking. I'm not undermining. I'm not trying to deconstruct. I'm observing a simple fact that there's a lot of good influences. There's a lot of good material, but in my whole lifetime, it hasn't gained traction. As I've looked back and done a recent show with Jillian, we've found that people in the 30s, in New Zealand particularly, there was a big movement of people trying to challenge, ask questions, be honest. That didn't gain traction. So there's 90 years worth. And then we can go right back to Canright. We can go to 1919, Prescott, all these guys, Daniels, they're discussing these very issues we're discussing now. And all people can say is, well, I'm too tired, or we've tried, or there's going to be good things coming, or we can always reflect back on this. Whereas with the conservatives, they've got leadership. Someone like Doug Batchelor gets up and starts a ministry and thousands of people come. So people who enjoy that kind of Adventism have a place to go. I'm trying to encourage progressives, or all the people who have contributed to this book, all the people that have loved Des Ford since the beginning of his ministry, which I do. I'm trying to say, is there someone amongst you who can actually bring everybody together? Now, a few years ago, I spoke to a guy. He used to be at GC level. He had lunch with me and he said, we're working on it. He even mentioned some of the names that I can see in this book. He was very high up at GC. We're working on establishing a network and creating a safe environment for progressive Adventists and young people coming up to give them an assurance of the salvation. Now, that would have had to have been maybe 4 years ago. Nothing's happened. I'm suggesting that there needs to be action and a higher level sense of responsibility. Now, again, having said that, it's not my kind of Adventism, even the progressive kind anymore. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't even encourage anybody who's never known about Adventism to embark on in embracing any kind of Adventism. But as an observer, an outsider looking in, I can see a big mental health problem for young people. And I can see a bunch of people that are doing nothing about creating a system, institutionalizing, organizing a safe place and haven for them. Because I know they're not going to leave. I know the progressives aren't going to leave. They love Ellen as well, and they don't want to leave. But I can see thousands and thousands of young people leaving every year. I can see thousands and thousands of young people staying but feeling unsafe. And I'm surprised that no leadership, institutionalized, independent ministry has grown and survived and thrived within the Adventist Church.
Yeah, you're really talking. I mean, I sense in a way you're rooting for the Seventh-day Adventists, not because you want to be one again.
Yes,
but you're rooting for them to succeed. And I think of Don McAdams, who after his presidency at Southwestern, he moved on to another life. He's a consultant, and he was a great success in Texas education, and he had lost all involvement in SDA matters.
Oh, wow.
His way of putting it is to my SDA friends, I'm a non-Adventist, but to my non-Adventist friends, I'm an Adventist.
Right. Yeah.
But he's off in his own tangent. But he says, I don't like the church to do stupid stuff. So I root for them to get it right.
Did you say this is Don McAdams?
Yeah, Don McAdams.
Yeah, wow. That's very interesting.
Yeah. And I sense a little of that in you. I mean, it's not that you have a personal stake necessarily in the outcome. Maybe you're thinking of your child and your older child. I didn't have a choice about being a Seventh-day Adventist. I grew up one. I was born one in a sense.
Yeah, me too.
But when my children were about the age of your children, I then had to decide: do I want them to remain SDA and go to parochial schools and to go to the church and so on? and I felt that it would be healthier for them not to.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and so, and I asked them later. They went through some hard times and difficult times, and were exposed to life that I never had to deal with
It's a harder
growing
world.
up.
Mm.
Yeah, right.
The secular
But
world.
that's right. But I asked them in their, I think they were in their 30s by then. I said, "Well, did I do the right thing?" And they said, "Yes, you did the right thing."
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
And I guess if someone asked me what should they do, I would do exactly what you did. I certainly, because we have certain zonal laws that applied when my daughter started school. One of them is doing Montessori homeschool, and so
mhm,
that's not a problem. The other one is already established with a social network, so she is in an Adventist school. But my advice to people would be, don't send your kids to an Adventist school. Don't become an Adventist. If you are an Adventist and you've got questions, leave. They're my go-to things. I would like to do nothing to help the Adventist church. My desire is to help the people that were the kind of Adventists that I grew up with at Avondale. Des Ford, my dad, Salem, Lindsay,
mhm.
Dr. Magnuson, Norm Young. I grew up with their kids. I
Yeah.
grew up with their kind of Adventism. I grew up with your kind of Adventism. It's this kind of Adventism that I see as having a potential wonderful ability to save people from the more negative types of Adventism. So
Mhm,
while my first go-to is keep your kids all right away from Adventism, don't join and leave if you possibly can,
mhm,
to those who I know never will, including pretty much all the authors here, including
mhm.
Norm Young, who lives down the road from me and still kicking. These guys are never going to
That's
leave.
that's good to hear, by the way, about
Yeah,
Norm Young. I'm
yeah.
going to ask.
Uh, these guys are never going to leave. So all I'm saying is that special kind of Adventism I do have a heart for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just randomly find myself in a chair, armchair philosopher, an audience that is growing, and so I just say what I think. It doesn't really matter what I say or what I think, but for some people, I think it might offer a chance to be cajoled into doing something that I certainly can't do, but I would love to see done, and that is to have the progressives get organized and create an independent ministry that young people can actually benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
Something I think I would have, and I've said this to Jillian, something I wish had happened with Good News Unlimited. Not for them to have started a church, but for them to have been that kind of independent ministry for Adventists, but it was just too connected with the defrocking and everything else, so it could never happen.
Yeah. It's almost what you're asking for. I think is charismatic leadership. I mean, people that are progressives that inspire,
Yeah,
and people want to hear them. And I Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated here. I guess
yes,
that's the
yeah,
right word.
we've been
Yeah,
following that.
and
Yeah,
and I'm, was never a fan and never had his views of things, but he was,
mm,
uh, a very engaging life force,
mm,
and I think, and a lot of these people you're talking about on the right, who
mm.
are so successful with their podcasts or their evangelism, they just, they just have that kind of charismatic
Yeah, that's
energy.
very interesting you say that. So when I look at that 86 programs of season 2, of which we mentioned you and Ron, well, were one of the programs, I went away after that period of time going, these guys are charismatic enough to make something happen, and ignited my 5-year progression into, well, let's see what they do next. But what I've realized, and only probably just now, is that though they are charismatic, their desire is to still influence the church in a way that it becomes more of a one inclusive, diverse movement. Whereas people like Doug Batchelor, people like the Standish brothers, who are at the root of this current kind of major fundamental movement leading right to the top of the church because of their influence they had on the two big institutions in the United States, because the influence they had here, they early on realized that with their charisma and their fundamental approach, instead of trying to get the church on side and let's all become cohesive, and they started their own independent ministries very early on. So
Mhm.
what is needed with you guys, with the progressives, is not charismatic leadership. You've got it in droves. Whenever I have, and it's rare now because I've scared them all off, but whenever I have you guys on the show, Gil Valentine, Denny 14, Ron Graybill, yourself, Niels, Eric Andreessen's been on, Larry Garrity, I get so excited because of the charisma, because of the information, because of the knowledge. I love talking to you guys. I feel it's such an honor. You do have, all of you have charisma and knowledge, but I think you have a goal of somehow integrating Ellen White and the church and all that. You guys need an independent ministry, and it needs to happen before you're all dead and gone.
Well, it's very nice of you to say. I mean, yeah, I didn't realize you were going to be saying this to me. It's a lot to think about. I mean, I really don't. I don't have a good answer for what you're saying, but it's worth thinking about one.
I appreciate you saying that, and I'm certainly not. I wasn't intending to hijack the conversation. It's the kind of conversation you and I would have anyway if we were just chatting over a coffee at a cafe.
Exactly.
So I really appreciate that, and that's kind of the point of the show too, that we're really having a conversation that just so happens people are watching on.
I mean, if what you're hoping for, this would be a piece in that mosaic. This SDAQ&A, this kind
of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And to even just suggest that maybe that's something that needs to happen is not me saying it has to. It's just a suggestion from observations.
Yeah.
A local progressive said to me recently, "Oh, you don't have your finger on the pulse of Adventism," and I thought, really, I would disagree with that. But
right.
But even just saying it, so that there might be people out there going, "Yeah, it's a good idea. Let's try that," or not. It doesn't matter whether they do or they don't. At least we're having the dialogue. So I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
no, I
appreciate.
I don't regret that we're talking this way. I don't really have. I was talking about this, texting a friend of mine today about the fact that I don't crave being in front of large audiences. I don't. When I was younger, I spoke to big crowds, and I got some sort of adrenaline from that. I really prefer talking to you.
Yes.
Now I know there's eavesdropping, and the way you're set up here, there's a lot more people even than are listening now that will eventually hear it. But I'm really not talking to them in my head. Right. I'm talking to you.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And I really enjoy it. And none of what I say is actually to criticize, even though I sound like I'm a bit passionate. It's because of a love for that particular kind of Adventism that I can see dying, even though they claim it's not. I can see it dying,
Yeah.
Well,
you will get blowback, as you know, from progressives who still cling to hoping that. I mean, Fritz Guy, he'll to his death. He will
I know.
quarrel with you about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, he and Larry were on the show with me and totally
Yeah.
disagreed that it was. They were almost like saying, "You wait and see," and I said,
Yes.
"Hey, you wait and see. There'll come a time when it's all over."
Yeah.
Jane Krause writes, and she just recently left the church maybe a year ago, and will be on the show soon. Looking back in from the outside, it's like watching people put their heads in the sand, and that's something that I've felt too. Is that instead of addressing the issue, which you have graciously done, I really appreciate it. People will say to me and others, "Oh, you've just got an axe to grind," or "Stop attacking the church," and I think, really, do we just have to believe like sheep everything we're told? The whole point is to use your brain and look at the data and evaluate and draw your own conclusions. That's all I'm really doing.
Yeah.
I want to get your thoughts back onto the book for a minute. You mentioned that you were chatting, or Denny 14 and a couple of others had a chat to the wider state, and there was a sense of maybe it wouldn't be banned and it would go ahead anyway. What was the next step for Pacific Publishing to actually come on board and agree to publishing it? What were some of the conversations that are surrounding that?
Well, Dale Galusha, the publisher, and Pacific Press have taken on some remarkable publishing projects in the last few years. You take Gil Valentine's The Prophet and the Presidents. Well, they struggled to get that through. There was a lot of opposition to it, like there has been opposition to our book, Reclaiming the Prophet. But they got it through, and it's out. Now, Denny Fortan has published a biography of G.I. Butler.
Yeah, great book.
Great book. And if you read it with care, there's a lot of pretty provocative things said in that book.
Incredible.
Yeah. And then you look at also Pacific Press, and you look at Gil Valentine's Jan Andrews biography.
Yes.
Again, a lot of material in there that pushes the frontiers on Ellen White.
Incredibly. Yeah.
And so I question why our book is raising such hubbub.
Well, I guess they weren't published by Pacific.
Well, they were.
They were.
Yes.
I did not know that.
G.I. Butler and Jan Andrews are both done by Pacific Press.
Now I'm shocked.
Now I think one of the issues is, and I hope I'm not tooting our horn here, but our book is shorter and it's more readable. You get a 700-page biography of Jan Andrews, and you need to be pretty committed to that subject to read it.
Yeah.
Gil is in my coffee group. We meet every Thursday. He's the most productive SDA historian of our time. He's really been a tremendous asset, and Denny Fortan is right with him, or right behind, with the encyclopedia and stuff. And his Steps to Christ, the annotated Steps to Christ, all of that stuff. But now the annotated Steps to Christ, the Andrews University Press would not republish it. They would not do a new edition of it. They did the first, and then the GC got a look at it and said, "Oh no, you can't do this." So and the Prophets and Presidents faced a lot of blowback.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think our book is written for a lay audience. It's written to be read easily. And it's not scholars talking to each other in pointy-headed language. These are people, So I think that's one reason it scares. Scares the establishment.
Yes, you're right. Yes. So, it comes out you're probably having a feeling of, wow, this is
Yeah.
good. It's going to make some headway. But within 6 days, it's unavailable, comes down from Amazon, all the ABCs in Australia and the bookstores in the States remove it. What
Yeah.
kind of so tell me two things. How did you feel as you saw this happening? No, don't include the feelings of, oh, now it's going to really take off, because that's obviously a component. But how did you feel that, wow, your church isn't getting behind this as they perhaps need
Well,
to? And also, how, perhaps answer that first, and then just segue into what was the wider state's actual involvement with being able to shut it down.
well, Dale Galusha is not only a publisher, but he's a churchman. He knows this sort of Byzantine world of the committee and the General Conference and the North American Division, and he's willing to navigate that. Now, most of us as writers are oblivious to that world. I mean, he says, well, I'm going to hold this up till after the General Conference. I'm going to hold the book up. What he wants is approval for the book. So if he takes it easy, because to that point, it really hadn't gone through too much formal committee.
Right.
He sort of, it was his pet, and he gets it out before too many people had had a look at it. And then as they started to be aware of it, then they said, no, this isn't right. So he says, okay, I'll slow it down. I'll go through this whole bureaucratic process, but we'll get it done right in your opinion as bureaucrats.
Yeah.
And so now I think it's gone on too long. I think but he knows more than I do, I mean, but I think that October 19, when they met, they said, okay, we ought to now fish or cut bait here. I mean, okay, we've had our meeting, and we're going ahead. We want to go ahead with this book. You guys on the committee at White Estate, you're opposed to it, but you'll always be opposed to it.
Yes.
That's pretty clear. So if we're going to get this out, we have to do it against your opposition. And I can't give you a timeline. When you talk to Dale, who's, far more aware of all this stuff, he can't give you a timeline, I think, really. But Eric and Dale are in communication all the time, and they email, they sit down when Dale is in St. Helena, they sit down together over meal. They talk about all this. So I kind of wish, just for symbolic reasons, that Pacific Press would publish it.
Yes.
But I do not despair. It was discouraging, when I agree, it was discouraging when they pulled it. But I know people will be able to read this book.
Yeah. They'll still have access to it.
Yeah.
Now,
and as we've said, banning it is it's a marketing method. Really.
yeah, incredible.
Now,
John, I'm going to have a 5-minute break. We're going to come back. I want to chat a little bit more about Ron Numbers, a little bit more about your work. And then we're going to invite Jillian on with us to chat a little bit about some of her memories of the actual interview that I did with you and Ron. So, Jillian, I know you're in the green room. If you get some notes ready, because I'm pretty sure both Ron and John had some very erudite, brief things to say about Glacier View. If you could remember what that was, that'd be great. So everyone, thank you. This conversation is amazing. I'm really enjoying it, and I really appreciate Dr. Jonathan Butler taking the time to be here with us today. So we will have a short 5-minute break, and we will be back with more scintillating conversation.
Okay.
love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, 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 I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, and all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, whoa, I will never be the same, will never be the same ever again. Love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, 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 I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, then all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, never be the same ever again.
And welcome back to SDA and good to have a good size people watching today. I'm chatting with Dr. Jonathan Butler, and during the break my mind was boggling because I know it might be another 5 years before we get to chat again. And I have so many questions, so many things I want to ask you. I remember you talking once about the Dead Prophets Society, and I thought, well, I wish I could be a member of that, or at least a fly on the wall. Do you guys still get together and chat?
Yeah, every
regularly?
Thursday, pretty much.
In the real world or on Zoom?
Mostly Zoom. We've moved a little apart because Larry's about a half hour away in Redlands, and Ron Griebel's a half hour the other way up in Ontario, all this in Southern California. Gil and I are closer, but we'll still, particularly if Larry's coming over for a committee meeting at Loma Linda or something, or there are times when we get together at a Starbucks. We used to do that every week.
Yeah.
COVID kind of shifted it for us, but also the moving changed.
Yeah, as well. Yeah. Maybe you guys are the committee for the new independent ministry we were talking about.
I'll tell them about this.
Tell them that, yeah. And tell them to come on the show. I'm not, a lot of the progressives are fearful of coming on the show. I really don't know why, but that's the feedback I've gotten. So can you share a little bit about how the White Estate influenced the Pacific Publishing? What process did they go through to ensure or to take the next steps? And this guy Dale you're speaking of, he doesn't work for Pacific Publishing, does he?
He's the publisher. Yeah,
He is the publisher. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
he's in charge. Yeah.
Right. Yes, I remember Alex Carpenter talking to me about him actually. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there was no formal involvement of the White Estate, but they did. Now it's a little strange because, they have not paid much attention to publications over the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
When Ron Numbers published his book, I mean, they published an answer to Ron Numbers, which was longer than his book, and took it piece by piece. And they sent up Ron Graybill, who was working for them at the time, and Dick Schwartz, who was the historian at Andrews, and they went through every line of Ron Numbers' book with him in Madison, Wisconsin. They just sat down. And the agreement was, if one of us disagrees with you, Ron, on something you've written, a sentence, a fact, whatever, if one of us disagrees, but the other agrees with you, then we leave it unchanged.
Mm.
But if we both disagree, then change it. Now, I'm putting it the wrong way because Numbers agreed to that. I mean, he said, that's fine.
Wow.
It was a social contract. So when you read Prophetess of Health, as provocative as it can be, and maybe heavy going for the more conservative person, every line of that book was agreed to either by Ron Graybill or Dick Schwartz.
Right.
So
wow.
But they were very involved, and they still blackballed the book. I mean, even though their own people, I mean, Dick Schwartz was publishing the textbook on Adventist history. Ron was working there for 13 years. So, but they've kind of stayed out of it. We published Ellen Harmon White, a collection of authors, and Terry Amott, Gary Land, and Ron Numbers all were co-editing that book. Well, the White Estate never said a word about that book. Never said a peep about it. And for the most part, they haven't done that. They see themselves as sort of guardians of the archives, but they're not there to answer what they see as problematic writing.
Yeah.
But in the 70s, they were in there with all fours with everything. You know, McAdams, Bill Peterson, Numbers, Walter Ray. I mean, they were all in on those things. And then they sort of disappeared.
Yeah.
And didn't see themselves doing that until this book.
Yeah.
Reclaiming the Prophet,
So it might be a lightning rod that does some good and galvanizes people together. I'm just concerned that those that can make a change, though your material will live on, that the leadership is getting more and more firm and aggressive in shutting you down, and you guys aren't getting any younger, me included.
Right.
Those batting for this kind of progressive Adventism. What would you call it, by the way? But those batting for it, there's a bit of an end finishing line I see coming up for their influence. So maybe Reclaiming the Prophet is going to be the last real shake to get some action.
I don't know. I mean, there's a new crop coming along. Ron himself, Numbers, used to ask, where where's the next group of historians? And he started seeing them eventually. I mean, you see them at Andrews, Kevin Burton. You see Michael Campbell has been very productive. And when the Adventist historians get together, we met at Rosario Beach on the coast there by Seattle, and there's plenty of life in the Adventist. And by the way, the keynote speaker was Donald McAdams. I mean,
wow.
They brought him in to talk about his whole experience. So I think there's a new crop coming. They may have a different approach than some of us had. We had to be more groundbreaking in the 70s, and now they're building, sort of on our times. They're building on sort of a new. But
I'd love if you were to send me a list of names of the new crop, and I'd love to find out how strong they are in their convictions of making changes.
Yeah. You're just trying to recruit somebody for the program, I think.
Yeah, that's why I get you on.
But no, I think there would be people willing to come on. But I do know, I see what you're talking about too. I mean, I would sort of poking around, trying to get people to comment in Spectrum about what they thought of Ellen White, candidly. And it's difficult to get people to talk about that subject.
I doubt there's a new crop that has any influence or potential traction. I love what Alexander Carpenter's doing, and Lauren Seibold at AT Spectrum and AT. I'm quite often, I marvel at, in many ways they have created an independent ministry that actually has people. Whenever young people contact me and say, "Hey, I can't find my people," I send them off to Spectrum and say, "Hey, well, there's a community growing around that magazine."
Yes, they're both Lauren and Alexander are. They're kind of what you're talking about. I think.
Yes. The movers and shakers.
Exactly. By the way, both of them, both Spectrum and Adventist Today, have now a link up of our book.
Yes, I just shared the AT one in the comments.
Oh, good. Yeah,
on Facebook and on YouTube. So anyone watching, just look in the comments and you can see that. By the way, everybody, if you could lean forward and click the like button or subscribe button if you're enjoying the content, that really helps with boosting the algorithms, and YouTube and Facebook will send out the content to even more people. And if you've got a couple of dollars lying around you'd like to throw my way to help me continue creating this content, if you enjoy it, just go to paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music. Where am I? I thought we could just bring up a couple of comments that have been coming through and get some of your feedback. Now, I do recall in our last conversation with you, myself, and Ron was hassling you and saying, "Hey, when's your book coming out, John? There's one apparently been in the works. I don't want to draw any attention to it. I understand the process of creating content, and I'm just interested. You've written so many interesting articles and so much content out there. You could compile it all and make a book, just Dr. Butler's essential essays or something like that. But do you have an interest in releasing something that is along the lines of a more expanded version of your chapter 2?
The idea that I was turning over in that chapter about particularly the two genres, the testimonies versus the conflict series. That I would. I am working on a book, but I hate to. I'm also aging, so
Yeah.
people ask me when's it going to be done. Well, if I get non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I'm 80 now. I'm
Yeah.
80. So if I get non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I'll be able to finish the book. But if I get pancreatic cancer,
You won't.
No, I'll do an article.
That's how you're defining whether you can finish the book. What kind of disease I get. That's my timeline. Yeah. And look, you don't want to be like, sometimes you can have something hanging over your head like that, so that every party or gathering or church program you go to, people ask, how's that, whatever it is, coming along. I have a bit of that happen with me as well.
No, it can be, but I probably should never have mentioned it.
Yeah. And just quietly released if you'd wanted to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But regardless of if you do or you don't, there's just been a wonderful energy and incredible content that you have released. And we're not wrapping up, but if someone were to come and find some of your material, what's the best location for them to go online to find things out?
Yeah, I've published things in a number of places. Spectrum is a major.
Might be a good starting point for people.
Yeah, that would probably be good.
Yeah, because you just go to their website and just type in Dr. Jonathan Butler, and a lot of stuff comes up. So,
yeah,
I encourage people to do that.
Other things, but that would be a good start.
Yeah. Let's go to some of the chat comments. There's been a lot going on there, which is fantastic. It's the engagement we like. It's all about dialogue and engagement, and enjoying the journey. Arthur Klim, I'm not sure if you know Arthur at all. He's done a few shows with me over the years. In fact, he and I did a great show on Fred Veltman. Might have been even three parts. Arthur, we need to do another one. Let's get that topic back on the table. And what was the guy's name? I've got it written down. You'd know him very well. I have a mental blank, but it will come to me because I've written it down. Where is it? Trenchard, I think.
Oh yeah, Warren Trenchard.
Warren Trenchard. His book on Veltman is particularly good. He's someone, he and McAdams, I would love to get on the show as well. I think Jillian has even reached out to them, and they've said they would. Yes,
I think you could get both of them. You get both of them.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. I don't mean you have to get them together, but you could. Both those guys would be willing to come on.
That's terrific to know. Yeah. And I think Jillian has made some contact for me. She's been amazing at getting people on the show. And yeah, that's the funny thing is I'm a fan of all this material, but I come across as if I'm sort of being challenging. So Arthur writes, this has a feel of the old Soviet Submitdat Publishing. Is that how you pronounce that? I've often thought the GC operates somewhat like the old Politburo. Some of these you can take as just comments, or you can respond.
I do a lot of thinking in about American politics now, and the Trump era, and I find myself influenced. I've sort of had to reevaluate American democracy and how the politics works in this country and how it's been abused, I think, really lately. So I probably think about it more than I think about the Soviet Union, or Russia. But no, I get the analogy. We have our own autocrat now in America. So
Yes, yes, yes. It's interesting how closely our climate is, and our awareness of American politics actually is. It's as up to date, I think, as anyone on the West Coast would find, or anywhere in the States.
yeah,
We're as up to date in many ways, and as interested as American citizens are. I did a show on Charlie Kirk, and I think one of the Americans on the show was saying, "Oh, that we probably don't know much about it," and no, we're we're not even 2 seconds behind in as
yes.
far as content access.
What he really means is the Americans don't know as much about Australia as Australia knows Americans.
Yeah, that's probably right. Oh, good one. Friedman writes he really enjoyed the Arthur Klim show that we did here. That's good. Brian F writes if they don't publish it, proves the message in the book is accurate. um, some people commenting on my song that I played in the break. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a great song.
I appreciate that.
That's is that Annie Schindler? Is that who did the song?
That was actually my own original. That one, the
the one that I heard on break.
Yeah,
I wondered about.
Yeah, and I've just brought up on the screen if people want to listen to it for free. I'll leave the QR code there for a moment. You can listen to the whole album of that kind of laid back material.
Yeah,
it's an album I released 20 years ago. So
wow,
no, it's nice that it's still getting airplay on Spotify, etc.
Yeah,
and Gospel Adventist writes there is a Gospel Ellen and a Law Ellen.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think she changed and evolved in her own life, and I think she was converted at 1888. Not just she converted others to the Jones Wagner, sort of the Minneapolis righteousness by faith. She too had to undergo a conversion of her own, and I think in some ways refounded the church. But everyone who's an SDA sort of, it seems like, goes through this pilgrimage. They start out all law and order and Old Testament, and then in academy they run into a weaker prayer speaker who talks about the gospel, and they say, and so they're liberated from one form of Adventism for another, and it's really sort of playing out and personifying Ellen White's own life.
Yeah, and I think sadly at that point a lot of them then, well, demonstrably empirical data suggests half of them at least leave the church.
Yeah.
That's my suggestion of a progressive independent ministry.
Yeah.
Arthur writes, I've read the Proclaiming the Prophet twice. Generally, I think it is a good book. However, I take exception to comments by some of the authors that Ellen White freely acknowledged her use of sources.
Yeah, that's a good criticism, and I probably in my chapter am too simplistic about the way I handle that. I think you could make the argument if you nuance it to deal with this criticism. I think she was not pleased at first when the great controversy was being looked over for footnoting and sources, but came to accept it. I think that would probably be a little more accurate than to say that she was blasé about it. I mean, she had to undergo a little change on that. Now, the testimonies, I think she was pretty there. They didn't even want to change the grammar in the testimonies. I mean, they were very rigid about changes there. And I think that's my argument, that there was two very different understandings. The testimonies were inspired. The conflict series was devotional writing. It was inspirational. But no, I think I take that criticism that the book needs to go more in the direction of the critic there.
And I think you mentioned earlier that the books Denny 14, Gil Valentine have written, you don't have to read between the lines too much to see revealed a perhaps more accurate biting, shall I say, or look at Ellen White and Trenchard's book on Veltman and McAdams' book. Who's the other guy that wrote a couple of books recently that you would know for sure, but I haven't seen his name come up lately?
Oh, Casebolt?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Tell us a bit about him.
Don Casebolt was, he was getting trained theologically in college, and I think actually did some work in Europe, and then went to the Oriental Institute in Old Testament at University of Chicago. He's about my age, maybe he's a tick younger. We were on campus together, didn't know each other at Andrews, but he felt like he was going so far left that he couldn't teach religion in the SDA system. So what he did, his wife was a nurse, so he became a nurse, and he spent his career doing that. But then in retirement, he returned, and he's had the skills to read texts and do history. And he returned to some of his interests that he'd had earlier. He was a student of Don McAdams, for example, at Andrews, and knew about Don's work. So he's he's a critic and a sort of an historical critic, I think you would say, and we talk all the time on the phone, and he sends me his stuff and read it. I don't have the same point of view often. I think he's kind of he's sort of in that prophet fraud mode where he wants to make very clear that Ellen White was wrong about stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Now he has a gentler approach than like say Steve Daly in his psychobiography. He's got this confabulation theory about Ellen White, which I think removes him from saying she was dishonest, more that she was deluded about things. So it's a little gentler, not that it would satisfy a more conservative person, but I think the work he's done on the early Ellen White, Ellen Harmon years, you've got to read that if you're interested.
Ellen White, I think there's two books, The Miller's Daughter and another one, and I've read them both, and they're very, very good.
I'm very pleased that he did it, and he did it with great dispatch and great professionalism. The fact that I don't necessarily share his point of view on everything, there's no way I can do my work without consulting him.
And it's okay to not have to agree with everybody either, with everything everybody says. Exactly. And I was saying earlier, and I forgot to make the point that, and I sort of did, where we've got, as you mentioned, those who are quite harsh on Ellen White, those who are more middle ground, and those who are very supportive. And I think my point that I said earlier on is that both of those two sides have no problems sharing their public view on that. And we've said this many times in the program, those that I wish were sharing more are those in the middle who want to see her in a more context-driven way.
Yes.
They're the ones I'm cajoling.
Yeah.
Do you think that Reclaiming the Prophet will be re-released on Pacific Publishing? Does Dale indicate to you that it's looking good that it will happen, or will you have to go to Acorn or somewhere else, do you think?
I think it's too soon to call, although it's been dragging on for too long. But he is due to meet with Alexander Bryant, the head of the president of the North American division, who is on the board at Pacific Press. In fact, he chairs the board of the Pacific Press. So that'll be a key meeting. He expects that. I think I'm talking out of school here, but I'm hoping no one listens that will be offended. He expects that meeting to go well. He's gotten enough encouragement. I mean, just as another example, the president of the Pacific Union Conference wrote a piece in the Union paper, the Recorder, comes out in California, in which it might as well have been a synopsis of our book. And I think it was Eric that mentioned that to him. He said, "Oh, you never mentioned our book, but it sounds like our book." And he said, "No, I didn't mention your book, but I read your book and I love your book."
Right.
So, and this, so this is brass. These are people kind of up in the ranks a little bit, and that's where I think that the white estate is out of touch. I mean, I've read their initial criticism of the book and their revision of that criticism with great care. My chapter ends up a target for them. Gil Valentine's chapter ends up a target. We're all targets to a degree, but I think, as I was saying earlier, I think they're out of touch, not us.
Yeah. I smiled a bit when you said Dale is feeling positive about it. That's the classic progressive Adventist mindset.
Yeah.
I had so many people say, "Oh yeah, it'll come back as soon as Erton Kohler is in power," and I'm like, nah, it's not. And I think where the white estate are in touch, they're not in touch with the reality of Ellen White. They're not in touch with that, but they are very in touch with their audience, and how to lower sales of Ellen White books is to minimize her authority. And so your book and material, which I love, this is the thing people misunderstand. I love the book on the screen in the sense, not my ideology, but in what you're doing, what you're attempting to do, and how you're phrasing it. But I see also that they know the fact is your material waters down the authority of Ellen White, which damages the chances of them having more sales. So they're very finger on the pulse with how to market Ellen White books, even though they're not being they're a bit.
You see a capitalism at work here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so that kind of encapsulates some of the nuanced conundrums surrounding this topic, where yes, what your content is more accurate, but yes, if you're trying to keep a rock star's image and content alive and well, you protect it in quite aggressive ways. So they know that what you're doing is going to water down Adventism.
Yeah, well, I've got two comebacks to that. One is that something that Dale said, talking about the book and the criticisms of the book. He said, well, to say, I mean, I'm making this demarcation between the inspired writer and the inspirational writer, but to say she's inspirational or devotional,
yes,
or there to move us, to change our minds, that's not necessarily second-class citizenship.
no.
I mean, that's a good thing. That's a good thing to be.
Yeah.
And why to be threatened by that when you're moving away from maybe the literalism or the verbalism to that? I mean, there's been plenty of people who grew up on the literalism that were not really enjoying her.
Yeah. I mean, what you're saying is logical and rational, but if I was head of the white estate trying to keep alive the high authority of Ellen White and the myth of Ellen White, I would do as much as I could to keep your book away from my readers.
Yeah.
So there's a tactical side, and then there's an actual logical, rational, virtuous side, which you guys are on. I don't think these guys are playing the virtuous card. They're playing the self-preservation, growth of an empire card.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I feel that the progressives are naive, or they're not, but they're just not telling me that. They either do know, and they're going, yeah, you wait, we will slowly unravel them with our Trojan horse material, or they naively think they will change it.
Yeah, I think there are sort of two models of charisma or inspiration. One is the individual gifts of the prophet. They are miracle workers. They write in ways you can't imagine. They're so good. Or they heal people. That the personal gifts of the prophet is why we believe in them. And the Ellen Harmon period of Ellen White was rich with those. She held up a Bible. Well, she didn't really hold up an 18-pound Bible, but that's part of
the myth.
Miracle. That's the gifts. But there's the other model to inspiration and to prophets, and that is the social response. The prophet responds to the needs of the community. The prophet answers those aspirations of the community. They say, here, a prophet is this way, and sure enough, the prophet responds and is that way. And I think for the white estate, they go with the Max Weber model, that the prophet is the individual gifts person. And they want to see the miracles in the book. They want to hear the old stories about how she performed this miracle or spoke in this way or so on. And they feel that that's a move away from supernaturalism to naturalism, to leave that out. And, I think that's wrong. I think that the fact that Ellen White healed somebody, and there's some criticisms about this sort of thing, and some backing away of that sort of thing, but you can call it a miracle. But what about the Loma Linda University Medical School? What about an institution of higher learning, an institution that she had a hand in building and produces medical doctors who perform miracles every day? Could that be construed as a miracle? Could her institution building be something to say in her favor, not just going back to, when she was 17 and was in trance?
Yeah, I see that as side chatter about Ellen's role, justifying it, when we know that schools and medical centres, everything progresses to a degree of more benefit to community, and there's always someone like a Kellogg or an Ellen White or a Joseph Smith, or a Calvin. There's always someone at the start of various movements that we perhaps overly credit for things that would, if it wasn't them, it'd be someone else. It's more the grassroots of these kind of concepts turning into realities. Anyway, my greatest concern with Ellen White is that she confirmed via vision that a special judgment had begun October 22, 1844, and that a special message was given to be passed on to the world, that a time of trouble would come. Jesus hadn't come just yet, but he was coming soon. And during that time of trouble, you had to prepare for it, and a remnant people were raised up to vindicate God and for a time to stand sinless without an intercessor to prove Satan's claim that you can't do that wrong. She said, regardless of miracles, trances, churches growing up over a couple of hundred years, she said God told her to tell people that this is the truth and this is now about to unfold. Progressive Adventists, by and large, don't believe the 2,300 days ends October 22. Some now are saying it's a broader time period around that date. But generally speaking, most Bible-studying, gospel-focused Christians who want a relationship with Jesus and understand the atonement at the cross don't go along with that assessment. And for me, when I realized I couldn't go along with that assessment, I didn't then go, Ellen White, nice person, devotional, eventually led to churches and schools being erected. I went, oh, she said God told her. Wrong message. You can't interpret that wrong. You can't say fallible. We're human. We make mistakes. That message was so specific, so clear, so core Adventist teaching that it made me go, false message, deluded person, false prophet. Now, what you do with that, you can become a cultural Adventist and just push that out of your mind, or you can leave the church, or you can believe it and stay. But what I feel a lot of progressives do, I said to Bruinsma, Reinda Bruinsma, I said, tell me the good things about Adventism. Don't include schools, churches, hospitals. And he smiled because he knew that that's the go-to of progressives. Hey, we don't agree with her, and she's wonderful and she's inspirational and devotional, and these things wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for her. But the reality is, as far as a distinct, incredible, unique doctrine and message to the world, that's the only thing that is unique within Adventism, the very message that most progressives don't actually believe in. And so what they don't do then is move away from Ellen. They somehow incorporate her in the narrative. And for those watching on who have left, it seems a little bit word salady. Whereas to me, the elephant in the room is that distinct message. If it is wrong, and it was a clearly distinctive message told to her by God, then that is a false message, not just misinterpreted, but actually confirms her as a false prophet. That's where I ended up with it. And other people who end up like that almost sit back and can't believe that people who have done so much to undermine the authority of Ellen White still hold on to her as a really unique and special, inspirational, devotional character.
Yeah, I mean, I was. That's one thing. I drew on Alan Jacobs in my chapter and talked about how when you're reading a classic, you there's many points where you come in and you don't agree with the author or don't like his cultural attitudes or whatever. One thing Jacob says is, well, you can always close the book. I mean, you don't have to read it anymore, or you can walk away, or you can put it in its context and say, well, I don't agree with that, but I'll finish the book. It's a classic. But you're looking for the kernel in the book. You're reading the book with double vision. What you can accept, but what you discard. I think we need to get to the point with Ellen White, the SDAs, I say we, I mean, the SDAs need to get to the point with Ellen White that they can quarrel with her. They can disagree with her. They can say she was wrong about this, but I accept this other part of her. Now, the argument I'm driving in there is the test, there's a canon within the canon. In her time, the testimonies were the inspired writings. The conflict series was her going public and doing sales and getting a wider message. But that wasn't the spirit of prophecy. The testimonies were the spirit of prophecy. Well, SDAs don't read the spirit of prophecy. I mean, they don't read the testimonies.
No.
You can't find an SDA anywhere who sits down and says, well, I'm putting aside the steps of Christ. That's nonsense. I'm reading the testimony. No, there's nobody like that. But in her own time, those were the books. Now, the critical stuff you're talking about in eschatology is right in the heart of the great controversy. I mean, it's not just confined to the testimonies. And I get your point. You disagree with her, and you feel this is too fundamental a disagreement to say, I'm going to go ahead and believe in her or believe in that church. And I have no quarrel with you on that. But I do believe that if you're going to go anywhere in this church and move anywhere toward the world and toward dealing with the world, you're going to have to say she's wrong about stuff.
Of course.
And if you can't do that, you're a cult. You're a cult member. That's what you are.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of us who have left seem to observe the church to be.
Yeah, I mean, and
because
it's probably
they're not moving away from that. They're not willing at a core leadership source material level willing to say in fact, I feel like it's almost euphemistically spoken of as, well, she was, she had flaws like all of us. That to me is a diversion from the Bible teaches that one prophetic claim wrong, false prophet. So, we could look at Joseph Smith and rationalize him the same way. Well, they've got good churches, they're lovely people, they enjoy this, they bring a lot of good to the world.
Yeah.
I want to stay a Mormon. I'm going to have to say he was wrong. At the end of the day,
you're sort of stuck with a choice. Really, what's at stake here is your founder or your prophet, is she a Joseph Smith or is she a John Wesley? Yeah. Is she, and
that's a good point.
And I think on paper at least, creedally, the SDAs say she's a Joseph Smith. They see John Wesley as too minimalist and too ordinary.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I wonder if some of the other progressive Adventists have like Ron Numbers would have been prior to him leaving and a lot of the pushback he got from his book. He may have gone through a period of justifying it in a way that a lot of progressive Adventists do. But I noticed in our interview that we replayed last week, almost a sense of liberation and a profound sense of freedom and gratitude that he had left the church, and that he had left the realm of having to even try and defend her. And I see in my conversations with a lot of progressives a kind of tendency to like a lot of wordplay, a lot of word salad. And my friend from the SPD the other night was trying to justify to me the 2,300 days and how it fit, and I said, mate, stop, it's just one big mess of words that makes no sense. I said, do you care to come on the show and share that that incongruent conversation you just had with me? And even that, he said he wouldn't be able to, even though he was trying to justify the sanctuary. And look, I'm not educated in very much. I've got some sort of intelligence there, but I'm not an academic or a scholar. But even I can make some of the progressive scholars and academics with PhDs squirm. And I think I'm not talking about this conversation at all. Like, there's been none of that kind of. I've really valued this honest and open conversation, but some of them I can just see, even with Bill Johnson, the first season 2, episode 1, when I quite innocently asked, "Do you think anything supernatural? How confident are you something supernatural happened that night, October 22, 1844?" I expected him to immediately say, "Oh, very confident," and then go on to justify and rationalize it in a more verbose, progressive Adventist kind of a way. But he didn't. He just paused. And there's a good 7-8 seconds of nothing. And then, I don't know if I can answer that question, Peter. And I was like, whoa, this is, that blew my mind. And he typifies for me the progressive Adventist that somewhere deep inside, I just wishes Ellen White was out of the picture. And they could get back to the gospel and look at Jesus and what did he say and feel the assurance of salvation. And I sensed that freedom in Ron in our conversation, and I feel that in me since leaving, and there's such a wonderful gem there that the Adventist progressives have got, but until they have some kind of substantiate level of network, I just can't see it providing anything but hope. I was talking to James Baber the other day, and he said, "Hope isn't a strategy." I thought that was good. Anyway, that was more of a bit of a ramble from me than a desire of your thoughts.
You're right about numbers. He tends to be somebody that sees things in black and white. He's very quick and very decisive about his approach to things. I'm amazed at how quickly he could digest material and come to conclusions about it. He was always this kind of way. And I think he came from a very conservative background, but what SDA doesn't come from a very conservative background. I mean, you don't just blame that on he was introduced to a fundamentalist Ellen White and so he reacted against it. All SDAs are introduced to a fundamentalist Ellen White when they're growing up. That's
100%. That's the problem.
And right, and he eventually turned on it, but he did some very fine work on religion and science as he got to Wisconsin, and he grew as a scholar. And I asked him near the end, what are they going to remember you for? And he said, well, the creationist book, they're not going to remember the Ellen White book. That's the SDAs will remember that, and his scholars, his scholarly community knew about that story and found it fascinating. He had come out of that, but it's the creationists work on which included the SDA story and Ellen White even, but then also his argument that science and religion were not in such mortal combat, that they were closer to each other in the 19th century and earlier than scholars had realized. So, but in doing so, he became a more subtle, in making that argument, he became more subtle about religion. But
Yeah.
Ellen White was he didn't, he was working on the John Harvey Kellogg book when he died and didn't finish it. But his
Yeah. I was
his
going to ask
approach
about
to
that.
Ellen White in that book wasn't getting any softer.
No.
I mean, Ellen White was hard for him.
I was going to ask about that book. Is there a chance that yourself and did you say his second wife is Kathy? Is there a chance that the two of you could get together and release it posthumously? I was really looking forward to that book.
Well, it's not far enough along to release, but I've worked behind the scenes. I have a particular author in mind that was a student of Ron's, wrote a Pulitzer Prize winning book on the Scopes trial, and has written 15 books by now.
Wow.
And Harvard had the contract on the book, and I would like this guy to pick up with it. But there's another guy that I have in mind too. If plan A doesn't work, I've got a plan B.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
But you couldn't, and it's all housed at Andrews right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Rick Ferre, who lives locally here and was a lecturer up at Avondale University.
Yeah.
He has written a book on Kellogg, and I interviewed him about it. He might be someone to get in touch with too, because he has done a lot of work and research on that.
It's low hanging fruit from all that Ron did. I mean,
yes,
there's 4 chapters that are finished. I went up there and looked through, and they were very kind and brought the material down to me. And they actually contributed to the organization of it too. But he's Numbers was a meticulous scholar and would read everything.
Yeah.
And it's sitting there waiting.
Yeah. Now we're going to totally segue into a little bit of a commentary for the next 20 minutes or so on the interview we did last week. We're going to bring Jillian Ford on, who's been waiting patiently in the green room, and we'll bring her on. And again, thank you everyone who is watching and commenting. There's some incredible comments going on in the chat, and I think Jillian, I've brought you on in the right. Can you hear us, Jillian?
Yes, I can.
Welcome. Thanks for your patience. We're just having such a good conversation here that it's
alive
very
and
enjoyable.
in the flesh here.
Yes.
I'm used to corresponding with her, and I see her online a little bit, but it's nice to see her.
We're all wearing black. Must be a funeral somewhere.
This is a very dark navy blue. Very nice outfit, Jillian.
Thank you.
Yes, I love how it sparkles.
Yes, it's got sparkles on it.
Now, when we watched the interview I think it was last week or the week before, the season 2 episode 27, I think it was. Wow, it was just number 27, season 2 revisited. Wasn't it a beauty, Jillian? You and I chatted afterwards and talked about how much we really enjoyed it, and it was full of comedy, insight, hope. It was very refreshing. I'd very much encourage you to go and watch it again, Jonathan. You'll enjoy seeing Ron again.
Yes, that'd be fun. That'd be a lot. That would be a good therapy.
And I mentioned earlier those who would like to go and watch the memorial service of Ronald Numbers, just search in Ron Numbers Memorial Service, and you will find it. And that is a very special program as well. But Jillian, I wanted to see if you. I remember both John and Ron said a couple of. I wrote it down with time codes on a bit of paper because I thought I must do a little grab of those and put them out on our SDAQ&A highlights channel, because it was just so well said. And but it's 5 years ago for John to try and remember what that was. Did you have some thoughts on what was said about Glacier View, and any other thoughts you have? Please share away.
Well, I haven't been thinking, I really enjoyed the program. I think I enjoyed it more the second time.
Yeah.
Because the first time it seemed that, in my memories, that Ron had a lot of problems connecting.
Yes.
But when I listened to it the second time, it was really very, very good.
It wasn't as bad as we thought, was it? When I watched it back.
You mean technically?
Yeah, his voice kept cutting out towards.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which I found distracting because I'm not auditory. That bothers me.
And back then, because I was focusing on trying to fix it, it was distracting me.
Yeah.
But when I watched it back the second time the other week, I thought actually it wasn't as bad as I thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not directly following it, but all right, let me just say what I've sort of follow what I was going to say, because
you've disappeared from me, Jillian, a little bit. Like I see your forehead.
Aren't you fortunate? I can see you.
That's only the laptop. Everyone else can see.
Oh, okay. Okay. I can hear her fine. So,
well, I've got to say first of all that John is my historian hero. His work is, I call it mellifluous. The introduction in Ron Numbers' book. I was amazed that from a man, the insight he's able to get into women's heads, which I think is a remarkable thing. So anyway, that's the praise over.
There you go, John.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you.
And talking about, there's things I could say, I've just done volume 10, which is up on Amazon. And I've given up sending them to you, John, because I know you've got better things to do. But your introduction to Ron Numbers is in here. And so is a podcast that Robert Wolfgram sent me that he did by phone with Ron Numbers. And the thing that amazes me is the way he got treated. One thing was the way he was treated by Ron Graybill. And the other thing was these two people, and I'm not sure if this is actually in your introduction or in the podcast, that there were a couple of people down at, in the Los Angeles area. I'm not quite sure. I've forgotten who they were, but they actually hacked into the financial records of the church and burgled his house, if I'm not wrong.
They what?
They burgled his house. They went in, they're trying to get stuff on him, and they were in touch with Elder Pearson and Wilson. They met somewhere in a motel. So I must be getting this from Robert Wolfgram's interview.
Wow.
Yeah. Just to get stuff on him to get rid of him. And it was just appalling, because when you read his actual book, it's so tame compared to what's come out since.
Yeah.
And I just thought the way he got treated, because he was trying to help, he wanted to stay in the church. All his family were ministers.
They were quite
he always
up,
saw himself as remaining in the church and working for the church. It must have been devastating for
him.
Yeah,
I think it was. There were hard times. I Yeah, I deal with the Ron Graybill story in the Destroying His Heretic. I mean, he's part of that story, as you know. It's an interesting relationship because I mean, I call him kind of a double agent in the story because on one hand
that's exactly what he was.
Yeah, he's actually feeding Numbers material for the book, and at the same time, he's at the White Estate. He's taking on this advocate role for the traditional Ellen White, and so, but Ron Numbers was meticulous note taker and documented everything, every way that Graybill had helped him on the book, and all the documents he had fed him and so on. And so he finally told him, well, Graybill went out on the road and made the unfortunate comment that Ron Numbers is an irresponsible historian, and something to that effect. And Numbers was furious and called him up and said, you know, I have all this material on you, you know, and that changed everything. And the two were sort of at loggerheads after that, or just went their separate ways. But we had one of our coffee sessions, and it was on a Zoom, and I was in Madison with Numbers when this happened, and the coffee guys are there, and so there's Graybill and Numbers in the same room together. It was a Zoom, but they were talking on Zoom together. And
wow,
Ron, who is a friend of mine, you know, I mean, I was tough on him in that essay, but he gets the point. I mean, he understands. He believes this was a flaw of his, that he was this double agent. I said, well, Ron, I try to rescue him a little bit. I said, Ron, who at that White Estate is not a double agent? I mean, every one of them there knows about Ellen White in ways they're not releasing to the public. They're hiding out. And he gets in trouble for publishing one version of his dissertation to the Johns Hopkins people and another for his White Estate. But Arthur White had two versions of his own Ellen White. He had, and every one of them did. Bob Olson, they all had that. So why should Ron be so hard on himself? But let me get to the end of the story here. Is so Graybill at this coffee, they brought up this thing of, I'm an irresponsible historian, and all the way he had turned on Numbers in public, but in private was supporting him. And Graybill said, I apologize for the way I was. And Numbers said, I accept your apology.
Yeah.
And we were all
very gracious.
Yeah, we were sitting around agape, and somebody said, "Is that all it's going to take?" And Numbers said, "That's all it took. I just wanted to hear him say he was sorry."
Yeah.
And he did, and he really was sorry. He is sorry. I mean, I think he's too sorry. He's too guilt-ridden. But he said, you know, I'm sorry. And Numbers said, I accept it. And the two were fine after that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I love it.
There's just a little incident, which is not really what I wanted to talk about, but Ron wrote something, it's been within the last year. It was an article either in Spectrum or Adventist today. And he talked about Des, and he associated him with Ray and Davenport. And Bill Johnson had done that in one of his review articles. And I wrote to Bill at the time and told him, you're linking Des up with a bitter man and a crook. And of course, Bill never wrote back to me. He never responded. But I contacted Alexander Carpenter and asked him, could I have the email for Ron Graybill? And I wrote to him and I rebuked him for doing the same thing as Bill Johnson did. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. So he's a bit like Peter, you know.
Yeah. Did he write back?
Rebuking. He got it from me as well.
Yeah. Did he write back?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I was going to say, John, you did a very excellent job, and the article that you did in the Criterion about Glacier View back in I think it was early 81. I've got the date, and that's also in my book.
Well, why didn't you send me this book? I mean, I think I've got most of them, but
well, let me message me and tell me how many you've got. If you want them, I'll send them to you.
Yeah, let me look.
But I sort of figured, you know, you're not really a Glacier View historian. You're about the Millerites. That's really your specialty. And I was thinking, we want you to write this biography of Ellen White, so I don't want to bother you with stuff that's extraneous. But I'm happy to send them if you just.
Well, it actually, because in my book, I'm doing the last chapter, the 7th chapter, is dealing with the posthumous Ellen White, how she was used and used and abused in after she was gone. So this kind of stuff, Des and Glacier View and all of that, fits into one of the Ellen Whites for me. I mean, I have her as kind of a paradigm through all of them. And sometimes
I mean, Des actually had a very high view of Ellen White.
Yes, yeah.
And he was really misunderstood because he was trying to give a biblical explanation of what Ellen White taught. But I don't think that was ever fully understood, partly because so few people read it. But I've got to say that I came across I've got all these documents that I've scanned, and these books are 13 inches thick now, so it's basically they're books of documents, and they're for use for researchers. That's what the importance is. That's what I've done it for. They're for people to use. So people like Doug Hackleman and Gilbert, they're happy because, they've sort of come to me. I didn't plan to do 10. I thought I was going to do 2, and then I thought I was going to do 5, and they just kept coming. So, but they are in a sort of an order, and I have got an index that I've done of the whole 10 volumes, so you can sort of find out what's in where.
Nice. Yeah.
But anyway, what was I talking about? I came across this volume turned out to be a whole string of heretics. It's just the way it turned out. And I had the stuff early on when I was doing it. Robert Wolfgram said, I've got this podcast. It was very poor quality. And anyway, I won't go into the details about that. But that's why I asked you, could I also put in your introduction? Because it had already been published in Spectrum. And then I found this Criterion article, and I hadn't realized that you'd written it. And it was, Des had a copy, but part of it was cut off. So I talked to you about that, and eventually Gilbert Valentine sent me a full copy. So that's in the book. But when I read it, I was so impressed with it because, in my opinion, it was very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, now the important thing about that is that I don't think you were at Glacier View itself, were you?
No.
And therefore I thought that means that somebody, the Loma Linda scholars, have come home and they've told you what happened. And that's very, very important to have documented what they said when they first came back.
Well, you know what happened? What happened was Fritz Guy had already gone to Andrews by then, and I was teaching at La Sierra, and I called up Fritz after Glacier View because he had been there, of course, and I called him up, and I think somebody asked me to do a piece for the Criterion, so I get Fritz on the phone, and we talk forever, and I'm taking notes, and really he unties the Gordian knot in that piece. I mean, that I have to credit him with the piece, but I was in his presence when he would tell people, well, the best thing on Glacier View, the best thing to read on Glacier View is Butler's piece in the Criterion, and I said, well, Fritz, the only reason you're saying that is I tell him everything you told me. I mean,
But see, that's a very important thing. You recorded faithfully what he told you, and that shows you what was in his head.
Yes.
Because later, the scholars tended to distance themselves from Des, and they became critical. He was arrogant. He was a poor scholar.
Yeah.
But here's something that's written, and I say, yes, you've got it right. That's what happened.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's a piece of gold, that document. And it was just by chance that I found it.
And that's in volume 10.
That you wrote it. If I'd known you'd wrote it, I would have read it earlier.
Well, and Fritz was really glum. He was depressed after Glacier View. So he knew what had happened, and Wilson was outmaneuvering the scholars, really.
Yeah.
And exploiting them. Scholars will sit there and complain about this or that, but that doesn't mean they're dismissing, the whole thing. And but Fritz was in a deep funk when he got back, and that's when I.
And apparently he took his credentials with him to the next meetings. They had another week of meetings of the scholars. I can't remember exactly what it was for, after the week of Glacier View. And he took his credentials to hand them in. But see, the leadership lied about what happened with Des on the Friday afternoon. And I got into trouble for this because I came out and I told Fred Veltman the truth of what had happened.
Yeah.
Because they had discussed sustentation and what the settlement would be. Mm-hmm. And Parmenter had come up to me at the end. Now, he was on his own, so there's only Des and me as witnesses. But he said to Des, what are you going to do now? I'd give you a job at the SHF. But I know it wouldn't suit you. So, Des said to me before he died, you were absolutely right, because they said I lied. They told Fred Veltman that we hadn't been truthful. And Fred actually wrote this in something that he wrote after Glacier View when he got back. And then 3 weeks later, he found out the truth of what had happened. And he wrote and apologised to Des, but not to me. And Parmenter went back to Australia, and the transcript of one of the meetings I think he took at Wahroonga after Glacier View, there was a question put in, the first question put in that meeting. Oh, you want to see how my camera works? It doesn't. It did before. It moves back to put.
Oh yeah.
To frame me, which is rather nice.
Yeah.
So the first question that comes up: were the Fords involved in spreading false rumors? See, we didn't spread false rumors. What I said happened in there is what happened in there. And a month later, when Des was fired, the terms that I said were talked about is exactly what happened. We were given several months' wages and our fares back to Australia.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've got off track as usual, but the two things that you didn't mention in the criterion that were key things, and I just wanted to ask you about this. One was the interaction between Wilson, Heppenstall and Des on the Tuesday night, which was a super dramatic moment. It was like a lightning bolt hit. Mm-hmm. And you didn't mention that, where Heppenstall is pleading with Des to see, he doesn't say he says the judgment, but he means the investigative judgment in Daniel 7. And Des did what I call boundary riding. Des could answer questions really, really well. He was known for it, but he went round and round, and people wondered what he was doing. But he said to me before he died, he said, Heppenstall was my beloved professor. I didn't want to humiliate him in front of the others, so he gave these long answers. And then Heppenstall, when Des wouldn't agree with him, got very emotional, said, you're throwing everything out and this and that. And then Wilson comes from the side and he's very harsh, and he says to Des, you'll never listen to anybody. Here's our emeritus professor, and you don't listen to him, and so on. And Des, to my amazement, he picks up his paper on the desk and he walks away. So he looks as though he's in a huff. Now, I've got to tell you, I've never seen Des in a huff. Mm-hmm. He's got had a lovely nature. So I asked him about that, and he said, I should have told Wilson off. He said, because he treated me like a 12-year-old kid in front of everybody, and he said his inclination was to tell him off. But I think he thought of that verse about with Paul and the high priest, where he called him thou whited wall, and he thought better of it, and he always moved fast, so he just took his papers and left to avoid. Everybody there looked at Des. They didn't look at what Wilson was doing. And my feelings now, when we got to Glacier View, Wilson spoke to both of us and said we were not to speak in the main meetings because he was worried, because Des was an orator. And he didn't want Des bringing anybody around to his ideas.
Yeah.
But Heppenstall particularly went to Wilson and said, look, I came here to hear this, dear boy. And so Wilson said, well, he can't speak, but he can answer questions. But see, Wilson didn't want him to do it. And so in the first meeting, which was Tuesday night, Wilson sabotaged it. That's what happened.
Well, I'm sure I didn't know anything about Heppenstall and Des at that time. But I've gotten to know more because of Gil doing the biography of Heppenstall. And he's been, so he'll sit at the coffee group and talk about their relationship. Now, I don't know where I got this, but I know that Heppenstall said my two best students, I think I got this from Fritz. My two best students were Fritz Guy and Des Ford. And so that goes way back to the Washington Seminary, But this, you're in the weeds of something that's fascinating to me, and the generational. You have Heppenstall, right, and then you have Fritz and Des, as his proteges, but. I've been really struck listening to Gil about how conservative Heppenstall was, really, and sort of self-made as a theologian. I mean, he wasn't the theologian that his students were, or that his students became. He wasn't in their league, really, and so. But how he figures into this, I had no idea at the time I was writing the criterion. I would love to have known, and I think that Fritz is kind of protective of Heppenstall. I mean, he has to know that the student exceeded the master. I mean, both of those guys went on to do things that Heppenstall couldn't do, but Heppenstall was this he was a theologian and he was a great preacher and so on, but
inspirational. And Richard Coffin,
yeah,
Richard Coffin was at Glacier View, and in his recent interview, he talks about everybody who were Heppenstall students were open-mouthed when he would not support Des, and we never felt any different towards Heppenstall. We remained friends, but he really was part of the reason Des lost his job. He wouldn't have intended it at all. But let me pass this by you, because I've been trying to simplify issues for people, and I sort of feel as though I'm finished, but I've got enough stuff to do volume 11, and if I do 11, I'll do 12. So I'm still percolating. Anyway, because this gets we're a bit off track. Is this okay, Peter?
Yeah, no, it's good.
But recently, Gilbert has done a number of articles, and I've talked about this on this program, a number of presentations about C.H. Watson, who was, an Australian who was the division president at the end of the 20s, and then in the 1931 to 36, he became the GC president, and he had to deal with Conradi and Fletcher and Prescott and so on. Now, in this presentation, and Gilbert, he's done it about at least 4 times, he had a photograph of the faculty in 1956 at the seminary in Washington, D.C., I guess it was. And he's got arrows pointing to 7 people who he says didn't believe in the investigative judgment, or said they got it from Ellen White and not the Bible, or had big questions about it. And one of them there was Heppenstall. And Gilbert sort of points to Heppenstall and said he progressed and he nuanced the doctrine because he turned it over on its head. Now, this got my attention because I thought he really didn't progress it. He made another mistake. So I've got these 4 versions of what happened in 1844. And the first one is the visible coming of Christ. So that was wrong because he didn't come. The second one was the shut door, where Jesus, they're still thinking, well, what did happen up there? So probation closed for the whole world. And then they tried to cover up that Ellen White had actually said this in 1951 was the real coming, and that didn't happen, so that was wrong. So then they come up through Elon Everts and James White with the investigative judgment, and that's actually wrong as well. Now, in the 1950s, what Gilbert was sort of saying in this slide was Heppenstall turned the doctrine on its head. And he said, no, it's not about God judging the saints. It's about the worlds and us vindicating God among the universe. And this is another idea of Ellen White's that's in great controversy, but it's the opposite of the investigative judgment. And it was wrong because we don't vindicate God. God was vindicated at the cross.
Exactly.
We believe in, most of us, in the Trinity. God is in Christ. He makes atonement. He doesn't need us to vindicate him. So here we've got these 4 views. And of course, Adventists, they got focused on the wrong coming, the second coming and the judgment, and they forgot about the first. So they missed out. They were very hazy on what the gospel really was. So you've got these last 2, number 3 and 4, and pretty much I was talking to David Thiel recently, and he said very few people that he knows actually believe in number 3, which is what's in great controversy. They believe in number 4, and they don't realise that it's entirely different. It's the opposite. And the fact is that nowadays ministers can believe in either, and apparently most of them believe in Heppenstall's version. And of course, Larendel took that up, and Dedron, and in California you've got Provencher and Maxwell, who are into the moral influence theory, and they've got their own version of this. So I don't know whether people realise that there's two views of the investigation, at least investigative judgment at least, and you can believe one of either one or the other, but you must not oppose number three as you're out. Do you think that's a fair summary? You'd have to think about it, probably.
It's new to me. I mean, it drops some things in place while you're talking. I say, oh yeah, but this is fresh stuff to me, really.
So if Gilbert doesn't question, he says that Heppenstall nuanced the idea. He does say he turned it on his head, which is what made me include me in.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it quite like that. And that he progressed, but he really didn't. He continued on what was a misunderstanding from the start that went through.
So you're saying he hung on to three. He moved.
No, he didn't. He changed it because he said rather than us, God, focusing on our sins, it was us vindicating God, or the universe vindicating God, which is a very different idea.
Yeah. So, but how then does Heppenstall become an advocate at Glacier View for Ted Wilson and all of that? I mean, for
Neil.
Well, I think the right wing have taken his idea. Now, Heppenstall would never have believed in last generation theology,
right?
But and I think that the idea is sort of in original Adventism. Otherwise, they wouldn't go for it. But the last generation people, by focusing on this group at the end who are going to vindicate God, they're Heppenstall's grandchildren, like it or not.
Yeah.
As well as Ellen White.
Right.
Anyway, that's my summary that I've been working on. And I actually gave a chart to Peter. I think it's too complicated to put it up. I've been working on it a while, and I've called it the Adventist hamburger. And the top hamburger is the traditional.
We can bring it on.
Yes, but I have to sort of explain it. And I've sent it to Jonathan by email, but I can tell you vaguely. You've got in the middle, you've got, and this is the meat in the middle of the sandwich. Righteousness by faith, as per Luther. And then the top bun is traditional Adventism. And the bottom one is liberal Adventism, which is largely Loma Linda. And both sides have basically debunked Luther, which is where I have a problem with Peter, because he seems to group progressives as one bunch, but they actually have very different ideas.
You'll let me just bring my screen on. I happen to have here. They are the big tent guys that actually don't fall into one bunch. They're revisionists. That's not my Adventism. Big tent, liberal. And then we've got our cultural SDAs, which form both. And your traditional, then you've got your leadership up the top floating over all of it, keeping control. My point isn't that the progressives are or need to be one bunch, is that they need to more publicly present what it means to be different to the traditional Adventists. What is unique about them that is diverse, broad, inclusive, and whenever I try and get them on to the show, they don't come on. But I agree that they don't like being categorized, and B, they can't be because they are so diverse. But there are some things, like, for example, all the authors in this book, there are things that hold them together, though diverse. Like Jonathan was talking about Casebolt, there's some diverse stuff there, but there's agreed upon. And one of the most agreed upon things is it's okay to think differently. Progressives are okay with Jonathan thinking something differently to Gil Valentine. That's okay. You're allowed to talk about your different views. But it's a degree of where...
But they would never get behind Des, because
they didn't want to lose their job.
Preaching righteousness by faith, as per people like John Stott, F.F. Bruce, a long line of evangelical scholars. And as Jack Provencher openly said on the Thursday afternoon at Glacier View, he said, I agree with Des about the investigative judgment, but I don't agree with him on justification by faith. So this is largely why a lot of those scholars did not support Des. They didn't agree with him.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
I think, though, that there was things they did agree with him on, and the only reason they highlighted the things they didn't agree with him on was to somehow show Neil that, hey, we don't totally agree with Des. They were trying to play the be true to themselves, but also keep their jobs and be seen to be, party members.
Yeah, I don't think they agreed with him. Anyway.
Yeah, but I'm not saying they agree. I'm not saying they agreed with him, but I'm saying they definitely agreed with some of what he said.
Yeah, and
a lot of what he
anyway. Let's get. I wanted to ask you a question which is not related, but it sort of is, because here's a group that tried to get a gospel wing in the church, and that's the One Project. Is it the One Project? Because I haven't really followed them, but I know people who do. Tim Gillespie.
Yeah, they've died out now.
Do you know anything about the background of why he left and went into health systems? Have you heard anything about that?
His explanation for that was that he was getting to that stage in life where he needed to think financially for his family, and they offered him, this was a golden parachute for him. He would have a great retirement, and so he would be financially much better off. Now, as I understood it, he was going to still, visit the church and be involved in his church. It wasn't going to be an immediate, abrupt transition. I don't follow the church. I mean, once in a while I would hear him, but so I don't know if that's happened. But I think it was basically practical, not some ideological break or something.
I know that some of the young ministers in Australia hoped, because he had a congregation in Melbourne, that this would spread, that there might be hope that there would be gospel churches and that they could work in them, because they're so discouraged.
Well, there were several.
Sorry.
There were several in the U.S. I mean, that every week met.
Well, they would have liked several in Australia.
Yeah.
Because of the ongoing pressure from the conference.
Yeah.
I won't get into that, but it exists. So Bill Johnson was very much for the One Project.
Mm.
And
he loved going. He said even the music. He was fine with the music. He wanted to be.
Yeah. Bill has always been I never understood him, because when we were at Glacier View, he came up to Des. He didn't know me at all. We'd never met socially. But he certainly didn't like me. I can tell you that. And as far as I know, I've done nothing to him. But that was based on what the Australasian division told him, and it wasn't true.
Yeah.
But he came up to Des fairly early on at Glacier View, and he said to me, where I stand, Des, pretty much where you do. And you can see this from, I've got a couple of his letters. I don't have all the letters that were written in the pre-committees or after the pre-committees at Glacier View. There were 3 meetings where they looked at 2 chapters each time.
Yeah.
Bill was the only one who wrote 3 reviews. And in one of them, I think it was the one on the Book of Hebrews, where he did have some differences with Des. He didn't really see the Day of Atonement in Hebrews, but he said in that letter, more scholars would agree with Des than with me. And he said, Des has obviously spent many, many hours on this and is so familiar with the topics, we can't deny what he's done. And yet he took against Des. And the stuff that he wrote in the review, very hard to take.
Can I add a little 2 cents to that? Like, one thing, Steve Beagles writes a thing that needs to be reminded. Des agreed with the consensus statement. So there was a lot of consensus there that Des and they agreed on. And in my humble opinion, when Bill Johnson said to me, and I'm not sure if it was on air or off air, but he said he wished Des had put those ideas in his back pocket. That's why they were upset with Des, is that he presented them and would not put them in the back pocket. That's the impression I got from him in the interview.
Yeah, I think so. They wish he'd said nothing.
They wish he'd said nothing because they wanted to keep the culture that was happening. They really believed that what Larry Geraghty was doing with the soon to be released 28 Fundamentals, or it had been released already, can't remember. They really believed it was going to lead to the church changing. And I said to Bill in the interview, season 2, episode 1, how did that work out for you, keeping it in your back pocket? I said, you've done that now for 45 or 40 years at the time. How did that work out? And he went, yeah, he had to agree. Good point.
Right.
Because
the metaphor.
Sorry, John.
The metaphor.
John was just going to say something.
Well, I was just saying the metaphor for it was the Civil War, and just let slavery alone; it'll die out on its own. And I think the idea was that Des had re-energized the sanctuary. If you just let it, the scholars thought, if you just ignore it, it'll go away. It'll die a natural death. And so they were blaming Des, in a sense, for focusing on it.
Yeah,
because the reason for it was that Bob Brinsmead had written 1844 Re-Examined.
Yeah.
And Wayne Judd and Adrian Zukoski asked Des to answer Brinsmead. And Des said to me, Brinsmead needs to be answered, because the church tends to let time deal with these problems, and it never, like Dale Ratzlaff, they never wrote an answer to him. Des wrote The Forgotten Day, and they never answered Bob Brinsmead.
And they still do that to this day, don't they, Jillian?
Yeah, they still do the same.
We've talked about that in some of our recent interviews.
Yeah.
Now, we are one more quick thing, and then we'll head off, because I just want to point out Jillian and I are doing a late night session tonight with John Rosier. Now, John, one thing I wanted to say earlier is I'll be doing a show very soon where I try and present what the manifesto is of the Progressive Adventist, and the 3 go-to resources are 1, the Des Ford October 27, 1979 forum meeting, that 1-hour recording.
Yeah.
Second thing is John Rosier's essay he wrote called What Adventism Could Have Been, and this book. So I'm doing a show of Gospel Adventists unite around these 3 things, because that's where you'll find the hidden gems of Gospel Adventism.
Nice.
So tonight we're interviewing John. Now, John, we won't be talking about that topic tonight. We're talking about other things that will be fascinating. He's always a really good listen. But Jillian and I will be up late tonight. It's going to be 8 p.m. New South Wales time. Who knows what time? That'll be about 2 a.m. for you, John. So we won't expect you to get up again and watch. But just letting everyone know, that's coming up as a special program tonight. And can't wait for that. And then tomorrow at today's starting time, Andy McMahon and I are talking, and the topic is going to be, Am I an Apostate? She will be discussing how some people have called her an apostate because she's left the church, the Adventist church. And then on Friday, my time, Thursday evening, Pacific time, we've got a Good News Fellowship program with myself and Danny Big. So I just wanted to throw that in there before you wrap up, Jillian, and I then have to save this file in time for our next interview. Make sure you've got some coffee there, Jillian, to keep you up late.
I'm always up late.
We're going to go till midnight tonight.
Now, okay. What time is it for you right now?
Me, it is 4:00.
And here it's 3:00 in the afternoon.
And for you,
crazy. You people are nuts.
This is reminding of me of lockdown when I would do 2 or 3 interviews a day, 5 days a week.
Now, this is a bit esoteric, but John, you might be interested in this, or you might have thought about it. But Cottrell and Hamill both went to the office. This is in the early months. Now, I won't remember where I've got this from, but it happened to talk to Neil Wilson about the problems with the sanctuary doctrine. And one of the big things that would come up, one of the big arguments was that blood going into the blood of the saints going into the sanctuary defiled the sanctuary and it needed cleansing. Now, this is not a biblical issue, but it was a big thing with Gerhard Hasel. If you remember, he presented a paper on it. Now, Bill Johnson, in his interview with Trevor Lloyd, probably a year before he died, which Milton and I were very glad about, he spoke about talking to Wilson, this is Bill Johnson, and saying that he didn't go along with that idea of blood defiling the sanctuary. And Wilson said, what are you going to do about it? And Bill said, I'm willing to keep it to my chest. Now, that particular argument wasn't in the consensus statement because they couldn't get consensus on it, according to Bill. Too much disagreement. So it wasn't even in the consensus statement. And yet Des found 12 points in the consensus statement that went towards his view, year-day principle and quite a lot of other stuff. And 7 of them, he said, were key. And he said some of them we had never, ever said in print before. So I'm just interested in Bill having this conversation with Wilson and just sticking to this one about the blood defiling the sanctuary, because Hamill, Cottrell, Heppenstall, none of them believed in that part of the doctrine. And really, if you take that out, the whole thing collapses. But Bill didn't say to Wilson, there's also these other 12 things that I don't agree with either. And I don't know if there's anything in that, but it's interesting to me. Anyway.
I just had lunch with Doug Hackelman, and he was talking about his Cottrell.
The book. Is it coming out soon?
I don't know.
He's finished 1 volume.
Yeah.
That's about the grandfather.
He's thinking about 3 volumes. I know that. And
is he in this disease time frame of depends if he's got pancreatic cancer or Hodgkin's?
Yeah. I mean, he talked about how in some ways he's been working on it so long he's lost interest. And I understand a little of that. You get you're so immersed, then suddenly you're drowning.
I'll have to work on it.
Because the hard thing is there's no one else who can do it.
I know. And he's I was hopeful listening to him that and he's retired now, but he's a guy of so many interests. He's pulled in a lot of different directions. He's always
he sent me that. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, he's got the attention deficit disorder, really, as a person. but it exudes, very creatively. I mean, he does a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jillian. I jumped.
That's all right. He sent me the manuscript with 34 chapters in about 2012. It may even have been earlier. And the thing that impressed me was that Des was just the latest person to bring this up. Because he tells you about a lot of other people, the ones that you know and some of the ones you don't know.
Yeah.
And how they got put out along the way by the same, cover up. And the big thing about this whole thing is the dishonesty, the absolute dishonesty, and the way people get treated.
Yeah.
I think Gil's going to do another book on that 1930 period there and the founding of the seminary. I think that's going to end up a book. I mean, these articles you're seeing that he's doing, he sees a book there, and that could be interesting.
Well, I've just done a book called Bye Bye, which I'll send to you. about the 30s, or starting in the 30s, with the Vowlers couple.
Amazing.
But nobody knows anything about
Amazing
it.
book, really great
And
book.
I've done a lot of bibliography work, looking through all the records and everything. I've tried to put together, but it's a fascinating story. And well, anyway, we've talked about it several times on this program.
I used to think nothing happened in the 20th century. I mean,
yeah,
I was so focused on the 19th, but a lot of interesting things have happened.
Yeah,
30s,
and a lot of it came from Australia and New Zealand. New Zealand is a volcanic country.
Yeah.
And you see, the leadership,
always the one.
You've got to feel sorry for them. They used to have 8 or 10 people at once who were heretics on one thing or another. So they developed this way of just getting rid of them, and no explanations.
Yeah.
Wasn't done very nicely. But R.A. Grieve in the 50s, there were 6 people in New Zealand who were put out. Now, he's in this book as well. And that story is fascinating because R.A. Grieve knew the gospel and taught it, and he should have been GC president. He's one of the most gifted people you could meet.
Yeah.
And
the many amazing people that have been kicked out of the church, or shut, or silenced, or silenced.
Well, it's
so Gilbert,
Ireland. Who was? I think it was Peter O'Toole said that their greatest exports in Ireland are their artists.
Yeah,
and that really is what happens in the church. They're getting rid of their artists.
Yeah, very, very sad.
So at the moment, Gilbert and I are working on the same area, and it's sort of like a dance.
Well, you've been chatting to each other as well.
Yeah.
Now we're going to have to wrap it up there.
That's all right.
And it must be 10 a.m. for you, John, is it?
Well, it's 9 now. We've gone back an hour.
Oh yeah, that's right. You've got your daylight savings kicked in. Oh, that's good.
But it was
a
great time, and I'm glad Jillian came on live.
Thank you, Jillian.
And I'm glad to talk to you, Peter. It's really been. I don't know if we'll ever beat the 5-year.
I hope we chat sooner.
Yeah. But that was that stands on its own. That one with numbers.
Oh yeah, make sure you go and watch it.
I'm going to go back and look at that.
If you get a chance, watch season 2, episode 1 with Bill Johnson that we've been talking about.
Oh yeah.
And then the number 27 with you and Ron. I think you'll really enjoy it. Now I have your mobile number now, so look out. I'll be able to, I'll text you and say, hey, come on again in the new year.
Well, we had a little conference at PUC on Des and on Glacier View that Eric was involved with. You must have known about that, Jillian. But
didn't get invited.
Well,
when was it?
Brought it up. It could be sensitive area, but Bill Johnson was there, and
yes, I've heard of this one.
Yeah, it was a small group, and it was Angwin, and Des and you have a special part of that history, so they wanted to reflect, and I can't tell you what year it was. It could have been, could it have been the 50th anniversary? It was an anniversary year, and we were talking about so it was good, and I think the Bill Johnson I heard there is probably different than the one you knew back in the day. I think there's probably been some growth there, or change.
He definitely was very open and different in the season 2, episode 1 interview. He revealed a lot more.
Yes.
The Australasian division lied about us, both of us, me as well.
Yeah.
Nobody ever told us. So you're working blind.
And I think what Jillian's saying too, and I agree, is that they were thrown under the bus by the leadership, and the good people, the progressive Adventists that behind the scenes were supporting them, didn't publicly, and didn't really do anything to help administratively as well, to soften the blow. And that's what stings. No matter if they changed later, when it counted, they didn't stand up. And what I'm saying now is progressive Adventists, you got to stand up now. You're under incredible new leadership. You think Ted Wilson was firm? Erton's going to make it even more conservative.
Well, just to finish it off, I actually feel pretty good because I've actually got the written evidence of what was done.
Yeah.
And I put it together. And so
I
feel pretty good about that.
When we had this meeting October 19, I wasn't there, but the Gift of Prophecy Committee in the White Estate stood firm and together, shoulder to shoulder, against our three people from the book. I could go into why I wasn't there, but we won't do that. But anyway, they stood shoulder to shoulder. But when the meeting broke up and they started talking to the individuals in that group, they were far friendlier to the book than they had ever sounded in the meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, that's that group.
That thing that we don't like, and people looking on don't like it either.
Right.
We're talking about Reclaiming the Prophet, which is available if you find it clandestinely. Is that the right word? And I've put a link in the comments here. Everyone go and grab a copy. And also the links in Facebook as well. Thank you so much for joining me today, everybody. And I've really enjoyed it. Look forward to seeing you all again soon. And Jillian, we'll see you in 4 hours, I think.
I've got to do some proofreading.
Yeah, get ready. See you, John. So good to see you.
Great seeing you both.
Lovely to see you, John.
See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.